Hello everyone. Good evening. Okay. I hope I'm audible. So, welcome to the final lecture from Medieval India series. Okay. Today, by the end of this session, we would have completed Satish Chandra's textbook on history of medieval India. So, before we begin, let me just tell you today is going to be a lengthy session because I'm clubbing the last two chapters. Okay, the decline of Mughals. There are two chapters, part one and part two, and I'm clubbing both of them together. So this is gonna be a long session. From the beginning itself, I will take up a bit of speed. Okay, I will start with a uh, normal a bit higher than usual amount of speed. If at any point of time you get confused or you are not able to keep up, just tell me in the live chat and I will slow down. Or you can just take a break and go back and finish watching the rest of the video at a different point of time. Okay, but I'm not extending this to another session. I would like to complete it today itself. So we have almost completed the entire medieval India. We have looked into Delhi Sultanate, the contemporary South Indian dynasties, and what happened among Vijayanagara, Bahmani, and all. And we covered the major crux of Mughals. So what is remaining is the decline and disintegration of Mughal dynasty, especially the reign of Aurangzeb. Okay, so today we begin by looking into the reign of Aurangzeb, his relationship with Rajputs and Deccan and all. And finally, we will look into the Marathas and its influence on Mughal Empire, and how Aurangzeb's policies and reign eventually led to the decline and disintegration of Mughal dynasty. Okay, I mean, it's not just Aurangzeb's fault. Okay, it's not entirely Aurangzeb's fault, but it is one of the reasons which eventually led to the collapse of this dynasty. So we are going to see that as well. The successor of Aurangzeb is a portion that we have already covered in modern India. Okay, in modern India, we already have seen since the what all happened during the time of successors of Aurangzeb. So that is done. A session we have already done. Clear. So we are going to begin the 16th and final part of medieval India textbook, and climax and disintegration of the Mughal Empire, part 1. This is the first chapter. So once again, I welcome all of you to this session. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please do so, and please share with your friends as well. Okay, I will upload the entire PPT in the PDF format in my Telegram channel. The link is given underneath in the YouTube description section as well as here. Okay, you can put this in your URL tab or in your Telegram, and you can easily follow my channel where I will be posting all the updates and Hindu quiz, etc., etc. So let's begin. Good evening, Tamil Selvan. Good evening, Satya. Good evening, Vasanta Lakshmi. Haven't seen you for a long time. Okay, so once this is done, once medieval India is done, I mean, there will be one session on current affairs. Okay, 1 month. Current affair MCQ session of 1 month is pending, so that will be taken up. Afterwards, we will start with ancient India. Okay, but there could also be one video on how to write mains answers. Okay, there has been some requests on that matter as well. So I'm considering to do one, that will be a shorter session. Okay, 1 hour, less than 1 hour session on how to write mains answers also. So that might also happen in between, and then we go on to ancient India, followed by art and culture. Okay, so let's begin. Problems of succession. And one more thing before starting. So many of you had asked me for spectrum textbook. Okay, as I saw some comments regarding that. The thing is, I have not taken spectrum as such, is because I have already completed Bipen Chandra's Modern India, which gives you the story. Okay, I already gave you the story of modern India. Spectrum is just filling the blanks. Okay, it gives you lots and lots of points. I don't know if you need help of an educator to learn spectrum. Spectrum is basically very concise, to the point method of presentation. Okay, so the background story I have already told you. Then you know what the story is. Now just use this extra information for your prelims answers. That's it. But if I have time, I will look into that as well. But once only that, only after completing the entire history portion first, at least one round of it. Okay, so let's begin. Problems of succession. COVID impact, and I am getting back for a few days. Okay, Vasanta Lakshmi. Okay, welcome back. So if you have any queries in between, please feel free to put it in the live chat. I won't look into the chat always. So once you post a question, please wait for a couple of slides or something. Okay, and I will definitely look into all your questions and give you an answer. Okay, even if it takes some time, I will be definitely going through all of them. So, problems of succession in the Mughal dynasty. So, we have been, studying about Shah Jahan's reign and all. Okay, we in the previous lesson we saw Jahangir and Shah Jahan, what changes and modifications they made in the Mansabdari system, the Duaspa Shiaspa system. Then Shah Jahan again cutting down the number of horses required to keep to about 1/3 and all. Okay, so these kinds of policies continued. But even then, Mughal dynasty was at its peak. Okay, I mean Shah Jahan's time is known as the golden age of Mughal dynasty. We all know that. But towards the end of Shah Jahan's reign, the things were not so good for the emperor. What happened was, even before Shah Jahan's death, okay, like somewhere about 10 years before Shah Jahan's death, there has been a cloud of war of succession. Okay, I think it is needless to say again, Mughal dynasty does not have a law of succession. There is no primogeniture. There is nothing called division of the empire. There is nothing in terms with the Timurian traditions. No, there is nothing called nomination. It's always war of succession, and whoever has a better military power takes over the throne. That is what happens. So the thing was, in 1657, okay, towards the end of Shah Jahan's reign, Shah Jahan fell ill. Okay, he fell ill at Delhi, but because of his, the very careful and very loving care of his eldest son, Dara Shikoh, Shah Jahan gained back his health. But a rumor began to be spread that Shah Jahan has already died, and Dara is concealing this information just to, play his cards, just to gain throne all by himself. This is not true. Dara was not trying to do that at that time. Shah Jahan actually recovered. But the rumor spread that Shah Jahan has already died. So other princes were also very much anxious. Okay, Shah Jahan had some other sons also. For example, Shuja, who was in Bengal, then Murad, who was in Gujarat, and Aurangzeb, who was in Deccan at that time. So all these princes were also eyeing into the throne of Delhi. And all of them started preparing for an inevitable war of succession. All right. So now Shah Jahan has to avoid this war. It will cause immense damage to the empire. So at any cost, he has to avoid it. So Shah Jahan decided that he will himself nominate his next successor. Okay, so because of the loving care given to him by his eldest son Dara Shikoh, Shah Jahan nominated Dara as his successor. Okay, and granted him very high mansab at an unprecedented level. Okay, about 60,000. This was one of the, easily the highest mansab ever awarded in the Mughal history. So such very high, Zat ranks were given to Dara. And Dara was given an important chair next to the throne of the emperor itself in Delhi. And basically, Shah Jahan asked the nobles to see Dara as the next emperor of Mughal dynasty. Okay, these actions of Shah Jahan, which was done in order to save the Mughal dynasty from a war of succession, actually made the situations even more worse. All the other sons of Shah Jahan understood that Shah Jahan is behaving very partially, okay, very biased kind of behavior. Everyone wanted throne to themselves. And among all of the Shah Jahan's sons, Aurangzeb was easily the better general. Okay, it is undoubtedly clear from history. Aurangzeb was the better general. We saw his conquests in, Deccan region and all. All right. So what happened was, in the succession battle that followed, Aurangzeb, through his military strength and through his, determination and his efforts, he emerged successful. There are plenty of reasons for this. Okay, historians give lots of reasons for the success of Aurangzeb. Some of the important ones that need to be noted is the divided council and underestimation of his opponents by Dara. This is one. Okay, Dara Shikoh, having a throne right next to Shah Jahan, thought that he has the entire might of the Mughal dynasty and no other power can actually have a substantial threat on him. Okay, and by having this attitude, he gravely misunderstood the situation. Clear? Because Aurangzeb was one person who had huge military experience and whose army was battle ready. Okay, they had been in battlefields and they had won very difficult battles and they were ready to take on any foes. So Dara basically mismanaged or misinterpreted the entire situation. So these two and the divided council, obviously, the nobility was not, single-sided. There were controversies among them, debates, discussions, etc., etc. So this divided council, along with this underestimation, went against Dara and eventually gave the power into the hands of Aurangzeb at a very famous battle known as the Battle of Tharmat, which happened in the year 1658. Okay, this battle basically sealed Aurangzeb's claim to the throne. Okay, and after emerging victorious, Aurangzeb got into the Mughal throne. But Dara was not that easy to ready to give up so easily. So he continued his resistance for some more time. Okay, so what happened was, while Aurangzeb was advancing into the battlegrounds of Tharmat, Dara had earlier sent the best of his men to Bengal. Okay, I already told you the other sons. Okay, one is Aurangzeb, then Shuja was causing trouble in Bengal, and then you have Murad in Gujarat. So in order to quench the Shuja's rebellion, Dara sent the best of his troops into Bengal along with his son Suleiman Shikoh. Okay, led by Suleiman Shikoh. So the problem was when Aurangzeb's army marched into the battleground or marched into the capital, the main crux of Dara's army was not there. Okay, it was waging a battle somewhere in Bengal. And although they tried to come back as soon as possible, still they did not reach in time. Okay, and when Dara Shikoh understood that this army is not going to be back on time and Aurangzeb is advancing very rapidly, Dara asked for help to everybody he can. Okay, so he very easily, very quickly dispatched letters for Jaswant Singh. Okay, I mean, Mughals obviously had good connections with Rajputs. So Dara, taking advantage of that, sent immediately letters of requesting help from Jaswant Singh and Rana of Udaipur. Problem was, Aurangzeb was again, okay, a better general. He knew how to wage wars and all. So even before Dara did this, Aurangzeb had already approached this Rana. So Rana was already on the side of Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb promised Rana that if you join war in my side, once I become the emperor, I will give you a mansab of 7,000, which is one of the highest ranks ever. Similarly, some of the paraganas which were seized by Shah Jahan from Rana would be restored, and he would be treated with religious freedom and favors equal to that of Rana Sanga, who had lots of favors at that time. Okay, so Aurangzeb had already promised to give all this to Rana of Udaipur. So naturally, Dara was a bit too late. And then occurred another very famous battle, named as the Battle of Samurga, which happened in 29th May 1658. So this battle was basically, historians call this battle as a battle of good generalship. Okay, the battle was about the battle of good generalship. What does this mean? This means that in both sides, the numeral number or the number of say military or number of military units were roughly the same. Okay, historians number it around 50,000 to 60,000 units in both sides. So more or less the same. The difference was who was the better commanding general. That's it. Was it Aurangzeb or was it Dara? And Aurangzeb clearly was the better general, and Aurangzeb won a decisive victory in the Battle of Samurghat as well. Remember, in this battle, Dara had help from other corners also. But even then, Aurangzeb won it because of his superior generalship. Okay, so we should not consider these battles as a battle between orthodoxy and liberalism. Okay, some people tend to believe that Aurangzeb has been known as a religious bigot. We all know that. Okay, whenever we talk about Mughal dynasty, we always point fingers to Aurangzeb. Okay, he reimposed jizya, he led to the decline of Mughal dynasty, etc., etc. So naturally, Aurangzeb is considered as a bad person. Okay, and Dara Shikoh, being a person who follows his father's ideals, is considered as a liberal personality. But it is incorrect to view this battle in terms of orthodoxy and liberalism. Why? Because in this battle, both Aurangzeb and Dara Shikoh had help from all sections. There were Hindus who fought on behalf of Aurangzeb. I mean, with us in the side of Aurangzeb. There were Hindu Rajput contingents which fought on this side of Dara also. There were nobilities from Afghan, Ithni, and Indian Muslims who fought in the side of Aurangzeb. Same goes for Dara. Okay, so this was nothing related to religion. There is nothing orthodox versus liberalism here. It is simply a political matter, a war of succession. Two powerful claimants to the throne fighting it out. And the better general, Aurangzeb, took the throne. That's it. Okay, so Aurangzeb won this battle, the Battle of Samurga, and this is, basically, put an end to Dara's, aspirations to the throne. All right. So defeated in the Battle of Samurga, Dara flew, and Aurangzeb reached the capital in Agra, and Shah Jahan was besieged in the fort. Now Shah Jahan did not have any capabilities to defend against Aurangzeb. Basically his fort was besieged. Aurangzeb cut off the water supply to Shah Jahan's fort. So Shah Jahan had no other options but to submit. Clear? So Shah Jahan was dethroned by Aurangzeb, and he was kept in the female quarters of the fort with strict supervision for a very long time, for about 8 years. I mean, he was not mistreated, okay? Shah Jahan was not mistreated or anything, but he was basically enclosed into the female quarters of the fort, and he spent the rest of his life there. After 8 years, he died. Until his death, from the moment of his submission, he was taken care of by his daughter Jahanara. Okay, Shah Jahan had a daughter also named as Jahanara. She took care of Shah Jahan from his time of submission till the time of his death. And afterwards, after Shah Jahan's death, Jahanara again emerged into the public life, and Aurangzeb treated her very well. Okay, she was given very high honors. She was restored as the first lady of the realm and awarded high honors and accolades by Aurangzeb. Okay, and now so Dara has been done and dusted. Now Aurangzeb has still two more brothers to be dealt with, Murad and say Shuja. Shuja has been earlier defeated by Dara Shikoh. I mean Dara Shikoh's son. We already saw that. Suleiman Shikoh basically defeated Shuja in Bengal. The one person remaining was Murad. Okay, so Aurangzeb again, through his brilliancy, using some treachery as well, he imprisoned Murad and sent him to the Gwalior prison. And after 2 years, he was killed there. So basically, Aurangzeb eliminated all his competition and claimed the throne of Delhi. Okay, but even then, okay, even in this point of time, when Aurangzeb has complete control over everything, Dara was not ready to give up. Dara already lost in Dharmat, he already lost in the Battle of Samarga, and still he was not ready to give up. He fled to Lahore. Okay, he thought that let Aurangzeb take care of the business in India, but he will go into the northwestern areas of Mughal Empire and try to consolidate power there. That was the plan. So Dara went to Lahore and was planning to capture the region around that. But Aurangzeb marched to Lahore with a very big army. And when he got the information, when Dara got the information that Aurangzeb is coming with such a huge army, Dara did not even bother to fight. He just abandoned Lahore and flew to Sindh. Okay, and basically this event sailed his future. I mean, now it's definite that Dara has no important role to play in India. But then, even then, in 1659, there occurred another battle near Ajmer, okay, between Dara and Aurangzeb. And this battle, known as the Battle of Deorai, is actually the last major battle Dara Shikoh fought against Aurangzeb. Last major battle. We have the Battle of Tharmat, we have Battle of Samarga, and now the last one, Battle of Deorai. Okay, and in this battle also Dara has lost completely, and later on he was executed. So basically by this Battle of Deorai ended all the claims or any kind of danger that emerged from Dara Shikoh. So Suleiman Shikoh, early Dara's son, had been successful against Shuja in Bengal, and he always supported his father and all. So Suleiman Shikoh was also, captured by Aurangzeb and later on was executed. So both Dara and Suleiman Shikoh are dead. Okay. Aurangzeb personally defeated Shuja also later on in a battle in Allahabad. And this was done by his famous general named as Mir Jumla. These are minor points, just read through it, not so important. Okay, so with the help of Mir Jumla, Aurangzeb had basically destroyed Shuja's power in Allahabad as well. And Shuja was basically hounded out of India into the Arakan region. Okay, Mir Jumla hounded Shuja, or basically chased Shuja all the way to the Arakan region. And in the Arakan region, both Shuja and his family were dishonorably killed by the Arakanese people because of some political disagreements and all, which existed even before that. Not important for us. So everyone done, gone. Say Dara Shikoh dead, this Shuja also dead. Now Murad also captured or later on executed. So it's done. Aurangzeb is the final prince remaining, and he emerged the throne. So from all these, what is the takeaway? That is what is important to us. All these battles are not so important. Just remember about the Battle of Tharmat, Battle of Samurga. These two are the important battles. Remaining just minor story points. Just maybe you can remember or not. Doesn't matter. The takeaway from whatever I have said so far is that irrespective of everything else, the only thing that decided who gets the throne is the military power. That's it. Okay, in medieval India, military force is the one thing that decides who will succeed to the throne. Whoever is the better general, whoever has the better army is the next king. Understood? And Dara Shikoh had one more son. Name is Shibir Shikoh. Okay, Shibir Shikoh, it is another son of Dara. He was actually imprisoned earlier, along with Dara and all. But upon Jahanara Begum's request, Aurangzeb has released Shibir Shikoh in 1673. Okay, and he was given a very high mansab and was married to one of Aurangzeb's daughters. Clear? So Dara's son has been married to Aurangzeb's daughter. Number one. Now Murad's son, the others, okay, Shah Jahan's second son, Murad. Murad's son, Izzat Baksh, was also released from jail, and he also was given a very high mansab and married to another daughter of Aurangzeb. Clear? Then in 1669, Dara's daughter, Jani Begum, was actually married to Aurangzeb's third son, Muhammad Azam. So look at this. Aurangzeb killed all their fathers and emerged victorious, but he did not want this family strife to go on. So he made matrimonial alliances with the sons and daughters of these rivals in order to preserve the unity and integrity of this empire. Okay, so although Aurangzeb and Dara, Shuja, Murad, etc. were rivals in this battle of succession, in their third generation, in their second generation, the entire family again came back together. Understood? So this was Aurangzeb's method of administration. He always inflicted very strict, very heavy punishments on his enemies, but at the same time, he tried to maintain certain alliances which he seemed to be necessary for the pursuance of the Mughal dynasty. Alright, now we are going to see Aurangzeb's reign, his religious policy. Very important, because there are plenty of misnomers regarding Aurangzeb's religious policy that you have to iron out. Okay, let me see if there are any questions. Okay, study TNPC. I did not see your question, sorry. Shah Jahan's decision for electing Dara as next ruler was based on personal affection, not on efficiency of future ruler. Can we say Shah Jahan was not visionary here? And not really. I mean, say Shah Jahan, during Shah Jahan's time also there were plenty of rebellions and all. Okay, I mean rebellions from various sons, etc., etc. Dara was one person who was with Shah Jahan all the time. He supported Shah Jahan. I mean, even in his time of ill and all, Dara always was with Shah Jahan. So naturally, he had that affection towards his son. And Dara was not a bad general or anything. Compared to Aurangzeb, Dara was secondary. Agreed. But Dara himself cannot be considered as a weak ruler or anything. So first part of your question is correct. Shah Jahan obviously made Dara the next ruler because he did not want a conflict, or he did not want somebody who will uh, you know who will not carry on his ideals in the throne. That is true. So that is why Shah Jahan nominated Dara. But was that the right decision? That is a questionable. I mean, it's we can't actually say that. Okay, it is whether it is right or wrong. We can't say that. Just think about it. If you think militarily, then Shah Jahan's decision may have been wrong. Aurangzeb would have been the better decision. But think in a liberal fashion. Aurangzeb did not carry on the religious, this tolerable, liberal policy of his predecessors. Dara Shikoh might have done that. Okay, so in the field of military, Dara Shikoh may have been a poor choice, but in other fields, like say in the religious toleration or say relationship with other important dynasties, etc., etc., Dara may have been the better choice. Clear? So it's not easy to say which one was the better choice. But here anyway, Aurangzeb won the battle and Aurangzeb became the emperor. So what we have to move on with what happened in the history. I hope you understood what I am trying to explain here. Now, his religious policy. So Aurangzeb ruled over for long time. Okay, he ruled almost for 50 years. Very long rule. And this is the time when Mughal Empire reached its territorial climax. Very important for prelims. It is not during Akbar, not during Jahangir, not during Shah Jahan. It is during Aurangzeb that Mughal territorial extent reached its highest. Huge empire, very huge empire. Okay, actually, this is also one of the blunders of Aurangzeb. He tried to amass more territory than what he could have, stabilized. Okay, but anyway, Aurangzeb was. We will look into the political aspects in the upcoming slides. Okay, so Aurangzeb was a very hardworking ruler. He paid very close attention to all affairs of the state. Very strict disciplinarian. Okay, he did not even spare his own sons. His son Muazzam was actually imprisoned for a period of 12 years for intriguing with the ruler of Golconda. So that is the kind of personality Aurangzeb was. Completely impartial as far as administration is concerned. Even if his sons do a crime against the state, even they got severe punishments from Aurangzeb. So personally, he was a very, good, we can say very strict, very hardworking, very good administrator. Personally, his life was marked with simplicity. Okay, he did not engage in lavish spending or any kind of such luxuries. He was very orthodox in nature. Okay, and he very orthodox Islam, went ahead with Sharia, was not so religiously open-minded. For all this, he was known as Zinda Pir. Okay, because of his simple lifestyle and because of his orthodox character, he got this title Zinda Pir, which means a living saint. He did not engage in luxury. He followed the religious ideals set forth by Sharia. Okay, so Zinda Pir is Aurangzeb. One of the bad aspects of his religious policy is that he reversed Akbar's policy of religious toleration. Okay, Akbar's policy of religious toleration, which he has cultivated with Rajputs, with other Hindu kingdoms and all, this was reversed by Aurangzeb, thereby undermining all the loyalty that the Hindu emperors had towards the Mughal throne. Okay, Rajputs were very crucial for the Mughal dynasty. Okay, I mean, basically, it was with the help of Rajputs that Mughals attained such glory. Okay, we can say that in a sense. So, alienating the Hindus was not such a good idea. Then again, we will see that Aurangzeb's Maratha policy, again a blunder. So, his attitude towards Hindus, his narrow-mindedness in the religious aspects became a crucial turning point in Mughal history. Okay, Aurangzeb has been unjustly maligned that Hindus had become disloyal due to the laxity of Aurangzeb's predecessors. So this was his explanation. Okay, he is saying that because of the laxity or because of the easy-minded attitude of his predecessors like Jahangir and Shah Jahan, the Hindu Rajas has become a bit maligned or a bit easy towards the Mughal throne. So it was necessary to put a strong arm or show the might of the Mughal Empire in order to preserve this empire. And that is why he took up this kind of policy. Okay, I mean there are plenty of explanations arguing both sides, but in general, what we can say is Aurangzeb's policy was of religious intoleration or against the existing policy was a blunder in his administration. Anyway, he was a person who was not at all interested in philosophical debates or in mysticism, but he occasionally visited Sufi saints and got their blessings and all. He did not prevent his sons or wives from dabbing into Sufism either. Okay, I mean personally he had a religious view, but he did not try to impose that on his sons or wives or anyone. Understood? Aurangzeb did not hesitate in issuing secular decrees as well. Okay, I mean he was a ruler who knew that India cannot be ruled with Sharia alone. Sharia is Islamic law, and if India was an Islamic nation, then yeah, you can go ahead with Sharia. Problem was majority of Indians were non-Islamic. We had Hindus, Christians, Buddhists, Jains, etc., etc. So it is not possible to go ahead solely based on Sharia. You have to have some kind of other laws to accommodate all these together, all these sections together. And so he had issued a lot of secular decrees, which is known as Zawabit. Okay, what is Zawabit? Zawabit are the secular decrees issued by the ruler. I mean, any ruler, it's known as Zawabit. And Aurangzeb's Zawabits are collected into a treatise known as Zawabit-i-Alamgiri. This is a collection of Aurangzeb's Zawabit. Please remember it for prelims. Okay, and then Aurangzeb even forbade kalma being inscribed on coins. Why? Because just think about it. Even like if in modern day, if we try to inscribe pictures of say Lord Vishnu or Lakshmi or Shiva in a coin, it's not. I mean, we may not want to do that due to various reasons. One of the reasons being we may accidentally step on it. Okay, somebody might lose a coin and the coin might fall down or something, and someone unknowingly may step over it and thereby stepping over the image of a god. So just like that, Aurangzeb also did not want someone to step over the kalma, and that is not. It's just like what a Hindu would feel when somebody steps on a god's image, Hindu god's image. The same goes for Islam regarding kalma. Okay, so that was Aurangzeb's religious, policy or his religious behavior. He discontinued the festival of Nowruz. The Nowruz festival was considered as a Zoroastrian festival. Okay, and so he did not want to continue that, which he thought was against Sharia, because it's not an Islamic festival. It is a festival from a non-Islamic religion, which he considered to be infidel. Again, he appointed various people known as Muhtasib to various provinces. Who are Muhtasibs? They are special officers entrusted with this task of making sure that all the decrees made by Aurangzeb has been upheld in various parts of the country. So wine and intoxicants such as bhang, etc., were not allowed to be consumed on public place. Similarly, houses of ill repute such as gambling areas, etc., etc., were strictly regulated. Then these officers were also entrusted with the task of making sure that the weights and measures are all standard, okay, etc., etc. So the duty of Muhtasibs was basically to make sure all the decrees of Aurangzeb were actually upheld in all the parts of Mughal dynasty. But then again, remember, Aurangzeb made sure that these decrees are applicable to the public life, and it never interfered with the personal life of individuals. Okay, just think about modern day. Modern day also, for example, say consumption of alcohol, cigarettes, etc. You are not allowed to do that in a public place. Okay, you can't smoke out in public. That is against the law, and police can arrest you or give you fine if you do that. But inside the house, if a person smokes a cigarette, legally you can't enter the private space of that person and arrest him. That's not possible. I mean, it's bad. Obviously, smoking is bad, but still, it's in a private space, so you are not allowed to. The law cannot enter there and take away that person's right. Same happened here. Aurangzeb issued various decrees which are related to the public life of people. But in their private lives, Aurangzeb made sure that these Muhtasibs did not interfere there. Okay, and in general, Aurangzeb was a very puritanical person. What is the meaning of this word puritanical? Puritanical means he wanted to project himself as a very staunch, ideal Islamic person. Okay, he wanted to be a true Islamic person who lives the life in accordance with Sharia, Quran, etc., etc. So he forbade singing in the court. Okay, the practice of singing or using sama in the court was basically something that was borrowed from the Hindu culture, which is not in accordance with Sharia. So this was forbidden by Aurangzeb. However, instrumental music was allowed. Instrumental music and the Nawbat. Nawbat is the royal band. These were allowed by Aurangzeb. Okay, but even then, Aurangzeb did not interfere when the court ladies and his sons, entertained all these vocal and all. The court ladies or the ladies of the harem and Aurangzeb's sons, etc., were allowed to engage, musicians and all. But as far as the Mughal court is concerned, as far as the emperor's court is concerned, all the musicians has been disbanded and pensioned off. However, instrumental music was allowed to be carried on. It is also very interesting to know that the largest number of Persian works on classical Indian music were actually written in Aurangzeb's period. Okay, largest number of Persian works on Indian classical music were actually written during the period of Aurangzeb. And he himself was a very proficient player of Veena. We all know that. I think I have explained these points in the previous class as well. Aurangzeb actually discontinued the practice of Jarokha Darshan also. Okay, Jarokha Darshan, if you remember, something that started by Akbar. Okay, Jarokha Darshan means what? This, the emperor coming into the window and allowing himself to be seen by the subjects. This is considered as a very auspicious activity and all. Okay, and this was discontinued by Aurangzeb, giving the reason that this is highly superstitious. And Aurangzeb, being a very staunch Islam, is against all kinds of superstition. Okay, he also forbade certain practices of weighing the emperor against gold and silver. Again, this was also a practice started by Akbar. Okay, weighing the emperor with gold and silver. You have seen that in temples and all, right? Even now in modern day, we see this called Tulabharam, etc., etc., where on one area you will sit, the other in the other portion you will be weighed against maybe rice or say whatever, wheat or bananas or whatever. Okay, during those times there was a practice where the emperor was weighed against gold and silver. Aurangzeb discontinued this practice as well. All right, but again, there were exceptions to this practice. He had to do this practice on certain occasions, but in general, he banned it. He obviously forbade the astrologers from preparing almanacs. What are almanacs? Almanacs are prediction calendars. Okay, your next year is going to be like this. That kind of predictions are given by certain astrologers, right? Even now, it's very prevalent. So, making these kinds of almanacs were prevented by Aurangzeb. But nobody took this very seriously. Almanacs were very prevalent even during his reign. The throne room, okay, the emperor's room where the main Delhi throne was kept. This room was furnished with very cheap and simple style. He did not want to spend too much into elaborate luxuries. So a very minimal amount of design works were kept, and in general, it was kept as very simple. In order to save on the economy side, Aurangzeb even discontinued the department of history writing. Okay, there was a department which looked into writing the history of dynasties, etc., etc. This department was laid off by Aurangzeb just to save on the economic front. Okay, there were certain economic issues that we will come to in the upcoming slides. So, in order to save the empire from economic fall downs, Aurangzeb did this also. So now I think you get an idea what kind of person Aurangzeb is. Again, being a very staunch Muslim, Aurangzeb exempted Muslim traders from payment of cess on import on goods. Not everyone, just the Muslim traders. Only problem was Muslim traders made the best of it. They took advantage of the situation and they even illegally gave their pass to Hindu traders. And when Aurangzeb came to know about the misuse of this, regulation, he reimposed cess on Muslims also, but half the rate. Okay. Again, certain posts such as the Peshkar and Karoris were reserved for Muslims, but this was faced with huge opposition because these posts are usually filled with Hindus in the local areas and all. Obviously, because the population of Hindus are much more than Muslims, and also there are not at that time there was not enough Muslims qualified to be in this position, and because of all this opposition, Aurangzeb had to retract on that as well. Then obviously he levied jizya or poll tax. I think you know what jizya is. Jizya is a tax known as the poll tax, which is supposed to be given by all non-Muslim personalities. Okay, all non-Muslims. Clear? According to Sharia, if the Muslims rule a land in which you have some other religious majority, then all non-Muslims are considered as zimmis. And these people, all these people, as long as they pay jizya to the Mughal throne, they will be protected by the Mughal emperor or the Islamic ruler. That is jizya. Okay, it's in accordance with Sharia. So Aurangzeb brought back the practice of jizya, which was abolished by Akbar. And this was again very unpopular. And after the death of Aurangzeb, after a couple of years, after a very short time, this jizya was again retracted. In the initial years of Aurangzeb's reign, Aurangzeb again went into a policy of demolishing temples. But there was some conditions. Okay, you don't get to demolish any temple as you feel fit. There were certain exemptions. Okay, you can demolish those temples which are new. Okay, which has been recently built and all. But long-standing temples were left alone. Very old, very long-standing temples, they were left alone. And renovations of these temples were allowed to be made because even according to the Islamic practices, no buildings can last forever. That is obvious, right? Because of the scientific reasons, no building can last forever. So maintenance works has to be done. So that was allowed on long-standing old Hindu temples, non-Islamic places of worship. But in all other cases, construction of new temples were banned, and recently constructed temples were brought down, and it was replaced with a mosque. Okay, and this practice continued almost throughout his reign, but around 1675 or towards the end of his reign, he stopped the practice of demolishing temples, and we do not hear about such practices towards the last quadrant of Aurangzeb's reign. Okay, during his demolition frenzy, he even demolished the temple of Somnath. Okay, the Somnath temple, very famous for the plunder committed by Muhammad of Ghazni. Aurangzeb destroyed this temple as well. Okay, but anyway, this practice of Aurangzeb or this order given by Aurangzeb did not lead to large-scale destruction of temples. Okay, some of the important temples were brought down, that is true, but that doesn't mean that Aurangzeb went on a frenzy and destroyed every temple in the Mughal dynasty. No, it's not like that. All right, destroying these temples were basically a two-pronged strategy. One obviously being the Islamic practice of not allowing non-Islamic places of worship unless it was very old and very traditional. And number two, there were certain political angles to it. Okay, by destroying a prominent temple, the Mughal dynasty can claim superiority over a particular regional kingdom which worshipped that temple. Okay, so that was the political angle. So temple destruction happened because of these two reasons. Okay, it's not simply religious reason. There is a political reason as well. But anyway, later on, Aurangzeb encountered a lot of political opposition from Hindu Rajas and Marathas, etc., etc. So Hindus started to create some certain rebellions and all against Aurangzeb. And rather than retracting his steps, Aurangzeb went on he became even more angry, and he now considered that it is legitimate to destroy even long-standing Hindu temples as a measure of punishment and as a warning. Okay, initially he did not destroy the long-standing temples. Only the newly constructed ones were destroyed and new constructions were banned. But now, when he faced opposition from the Hindus, that made him even more angry, and then he went on to destroy even the long-standing temples. And the very famous examples include the Vishwanatha temple at Benares and the temple of Keshavaraya in Mathura. Both these temples were destroyed and replaced by erecting mosques. Okay, and I already explained what is the political motive of this. Okay, I hope you understood. Now, in his policy towards temples, Aurangzeb may have remained formally with the framework of Sharia, but this practice basically gave a setback to the policy of broad toleration. Undoubtedly, Akbar's policy of broad toleration, which was followed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan, has faced a huge setback during the time of Aurangzeb. Okay, but even then, you can't write him off as a religious bigot, because we have instances where grants were made by Aurangzeb to Hindu temples and mats. Okay, Aurangzeb has given grants to Hindu temples and mats also. Clear? So it's not pure religious bigotry. It is a lot to do with politics also. Okay, so jizya was revived. I already mentioned that, and this was not done immediately after Aurangzeb got to the throne. Okay, he initially tried to bring back jizya, but he knew that there will be huge opposition. The majority of the Indians will not accept it. He might alienate Rajputs also, and there were plenty of opposition from within his court as well. So Aurangzeb did not get an opportunity to impose jizya for a very long time, and it was imposed only on the 22nd year of his reign. It was only in the 22nd year of Aurangzeb's reign that jizya was imposed. Okay, now why was this jizya imposed? Was this merely a religious policy, or is there something more to it? Is it an economic agenda? Okay, so historians believe that jizya is not meant to be an economic pressure forcing Hindus to convert. Okay, some people believe that this was done in order to forcefully convert non-Muslims to Muslims. If you become a Muslim, you don't have to pay jizya. So jizya might act as a trigger for conversion. This is one argument, but most historians do not believe this. Why? Because jizya was extremely, although it is a derogatory practice, it was lenient, or say, it had lots of exemptions. Women did not have to pay jizya. Similarly, children did not have to pay jizya. Disabled and indignant persons were also exempted from jizya, and so were people who were in government service. So huge sections of the society, irrespective of the religion, already did not have to pay jizya. So reimposing jizya may not actually be a method of religious conversion. Okay, so historians don't believe that argument. Then another argument that do not gain much traction is that Aurangzeb brought jizya in order to save the empire from a difficult financial situation. The financial situation in Mughal Empire was difficult. I will explain that in the upcoming sessions. But understand that Aurangzeb did not reimpose jizya to save empire from a financial collapse. Why? Because although he reimposed jizya, he actually retracted another very common cess named as Awa. Okay, large number of cesses named as Awabs were actually rolled back by Aurangzeb, and because it was not sanctioned by Sharia. Okay, collection of Awabs were not sanctioned by Sharia. So Aurangzeb, being a very staunch Muslim, did not want to continue that practice. So he rolled back that taxes, which means this putting jizya is not actually related to financial issues. Then again, the amount collected by jizya, what was it used for? Was it used to fill the Mughal coffers and spend on wars and all? No. The amount collected from jizya was actually earmarked for the use of theological classes. It was used for Islamic studies and for the ulama and their uses. But in 1705, Aurangzeb, faced with a situation, had to suspend jizya. Okay, Aurangzeb was engaged in a very immense war towards the South India, that is in the Deccan region, and he had to suspend jizya to avoid further problems. And later on, in 1712, jizya was formally abolished by the successors of Aurangzeb. Okay, among the successors of Aurangzeb, we will see that some of them retracts jizya and some of them again brings it back, again it's rolled back, etc. etc. But eventually, jizya has been completely abolished. Alright, so some modern writers are of the opinion that Aurangzeb's measures were designed to convert India from a Darul Harb, that is a land of infidels, into Darul Islam, land inhabited by Muslims. Okay, this is another angle. Okay, convert India from Darul Harb to Darul Islam. But this argument is also not so valid. Why? Because from the moment the Turks became the rulers of India, from the moment of the advent of Turks, India has already become a Darul Islam. Darul Islam means what? A land ruled by Muslims. So when the Turkish rulers came to India and they took control of India, at that time itself, India has become a Darul Islam. So, I mean, it's already Darul Islam. So why would Aurangzeb want to convert it to it again? Okay, so that is again a baseless accusation. So that is also not an argument which gained too much traction. Okay, so although Aurangzeb considered it legitimate to encourage conversion to Islam, evidence of systematic or large-scale attempts at forced conversion is lacking. Nor were Hindu nobles discriminated against. Okay, so being an Orthodox Muslim, he wanted to convert all these people into Islam, but we do not come across any evidence of large-scale forceful conversions. Also, he was very much impartial, and he did not discriminate against the Hindu nobles of his times. And some of the Hindu nobles earned very high mansabs in Aurangzeb's reign. Compared to all other Mughal emperors, during the reign of Aurangzeb, 1/3 of Mughal nobility were Hindus. So how can you say that they were discriminated against? Okay, just think about it. In the modern day India, in parliament, there is something called Women's Bill. Okay, that is a bill that has been in the parliament for a very long time. It lapsed and came back, etc., etc., which requests about 33%, 1/3 of the parliament to be filled by women. And that is not yet passed. And then we all say that we are not discriminating against women. If we can say that, then how can we say Aurangzeb discriminated against Hindus when 1/3 of his nobility were Hindus? Even at Shah Jahan's time, only 1/4 were Hindus. Clear? So these kinds of Aurangzeb is basically a mixture of a personality. Okay, in certain aspects he excelled, in other aspects he made huge mistakes. Especially when it came to religion, he committed certain blunders, but most of his religious decisions were actually influenced by politics. Okay, that is very clear. Most of his religious decisions were influenced by his politics. Okay, but in the field of politics, he made certain huge mistakes, which eventually led to a total collapse of Mughal dynasty. That we are going to see in the upcoming slides. So anyway, Aurangzeb's attempt was not so much to change the nature of the state, but to reassert its fundamentality of Islamic character. That's it. Aurangzeb did not try to change the nature of Indian state. All he tried to do was to reassert the Islamic character of the Indian state, which was already there. It was a bit liberal from the time of Akbar, but Aurangzeb wanted to reassert the Islamic character. That's all he tried to do. Now we are going to see what are the political developments that happened in various parts of India and how Aurangzeb managed to deal with each of them. Okay, any questions? I have been searching for NCERT classes in the English, but today I found only your thanks. Thank you, study TN PSC. Please continue spectrum. As I have mentioned in the beginning, once I go through the entire history first, I will try to cover spectrum also. Okay, because I already covered modern India, so the story is very well covered there. Spectrum just gives more and more detailed, one word points for you, useful for your prelims. Okay, so after hearing the class, read the spectrum. I think that would be enough. But if more people want it, definitely I will look into it after I cover the entire history, the whole round at least once. We have ancient India yet to be taken. Also art and culture. Ban of singing in the court can be part of discipline and appointment of muhtasib for checking upon malpractices and corruption, especially for Muslim men, while looking these policies through religious lens. Ban on singing in court can be a part of discipline and appointment of muhtasib. Okay, it can be thought of that as like that as well. But again, the interpretation, this is all about that personality. Okay, what kind of personality Aurangzeb was. He himself claimed to be a staunch Muslim. And he did all these things. Not regarding I'm not talking about the Mu'tasib part, but as far as the singing part is concerned, he banned all these things because it was a practice that was taken from Hinduism. Same goes for Nowruz. He banned that festival of Nowruz because it is not an Islamic festival, but it is borrowed from Zoroastrians. Okay, so the pretext the emperor gave for doing all these are religious. That is why it is taken as it is seen through the religious angle. Clear? But say for example Balban. Consider Balban. In Balban's time, Balban basically banned any saying jokes in the court. Okay, that is not a religious practice. That is just bigotry. Okay, he wanted to look very serious and he wanted to impose that stern attitude in the court. That is why Balban, strictly prohibited anyone from saying any kind of jokes in the court. Okay, so Aurangzeb did not do it just for that. Yeah, obviously he was a very stern, strict ruler, but that doesn't mean that he is, against or say he did that solely for that purpose. Then again, think of it. Aurangzeb banned music. If he was banning music for the purpose of getting the court into a very stern or very very disciplined area, then he could have banned instrumental music also. But he did not do that. He allowed instrumental music, which was permitted by Islamic laws and all. He banned only vocal music, which was sama taken from Hindu practices. Okay, so that is where it gets the religious angle. Anyway, continuing, political developments in North India. Aurangzeb embarked upon an era of very strong rule. Okay, irrespective of everything that I have said so far, it is needless to say that Mughal dynasty was still very powerful under Aurangzeb, very powerful. Okay, but anyway, in Northeast and Deccan, imperial frontiers were advanced. Okay, but in general, Aurangzeb did not embark a forward policy. He wanted to consolidate the empire. All he tried in his initial years was to reassert the imperial authority and prestige. Okay, after Shah Jahan's death, or say during the war of succession and all, plenty of infighting had happened in the Mughal dynasty that it caused huge loss of prestige to the Mughals. So the first ambition of Aurangzeb was to regain all these lost prestige and authority, rather than to expand the territories further. Okay, so first he did this, and then he tried to recover those areas which was lost during the war of succession. And then he tried to consolidate the huge empire rather than annexation. Conquest and annexation was given only secondary place. The prime focus was to consolidate the huge empire he inherited from his ancestors. So let's see certain important parts of India one by one, Northeast and Eastern India. So in the Northeast, we have already discussed this. Ahoms were in power, so were the Kamrup dynasty. Afghans were also causing very some trouble to the Mughals in the eastern part of India. These were the main powers. Later on, by the end of 15th century, the Kamrups or the Kamata kingdom declined and its place was taken by the Kuch, kingdom of Kuch or the Kuch Bihar. And earlier, Ahoms and Kamata were always infighting, and now Ahoms and Kuch started infighting between them. So, in a series of battle, Mughal dynasty managed to defeat the Kutch armies. Okay, and the Kutch ruler became a vassal of Mughal Empire. And by doing so, the Mughal dynasty now has a common border with Ahoms. So they basically, reached the doorstep of Ahom kingdom. So the Ahom dynasty, and they rule over the Assam region, northeast India. Okay, a very hilly tract. Mughals are not accustomed in battling in those conditions. They are very skilled. These Ahoms are very good in guerrilla tactics and all. So basically, the Mughals made a treaty in 1638 and fixed Bar Nadi as the boundary between Ahoms and Mughals. But Mughals annexed the region of Guwahati. Okay, but for now, they did not want to pursue over Ahoms, so they made a treaty. But later on, eventually, Mir Jumla, one of the famous generals of Mughals, he occupied the Ahom capital, Gargaon, and held it for a period of 6 months. And then he penetrated into the Ahom kingdom and finally forced the Ahoms to sign a very humiliating treaty in 1663. And every territory until the river Harali was annexed into the Mughal kingdom, Mughal empire. So it was a very brilliant victory for Mir Jumla. Only problem was Mir Jumla died very soon. Okay, and in 1667, around 4 years later, the Ahoms renewed their contest, and using their guerrilla tactics and the home advantage and advantage of the surroundings, etc., Ahoms gradually managed to recover everything that was lost against Mir Jumla. Okay, this was the northeastern expedition of Mughals. So Aurangzeb, what did he do now? He brought in Shaista Khan. Okay, Shaista Khan was actually a general who was placed in Deccan affairs. But he was called back by Aurangzeb and he was put into the northeastern affair. Okay, and when Shaista Khan came here, he was a very good administrator and a very good general also. So what did he do now? He patched up an agreement with the ruler of Kuch Bihar. And he gave very good attention to the problem of South Bengal, where the Arakanese pirates were causing huge trouble for the trade. Okay, I mean that area, the Bengal region, the Dhaka region, etc., are very important for trade. Okay? It is the outlet of the Bay of Bengal sea route. Okay, and these Arakanese pirates has been causing huge issues there. So Shaista Khan immediately concentrated onto these issues and he built up a very strong navy to meet these Arakanese pirates and captured the island of Sondip, which is supposed to be the base of operations. And he won over the Firangis, okay, the local people there, and he won over these tribes into his own sides, and finally the Arakan navy was completely routed out near Chittagong. In Orissa, the rebellion of Pathans was again put down and Balasore was opened for commerce. So overall, in eastern India, Mughals gained huge successes due to the help of Shaista Khan, because of the able administratorship of Shaista Khan. Earlier, Mir Jumla also brought great successes in the northeastern adventures, but it was rapidly lost after his death. But Shaista Khan managed to, amass a huge victory in the eastern part of India. Now we are going to see some of the most important rebellions that happened during the time of Aurangzeb. That is the Jat rebellion, Afghan rebellion, and the Sikh rebellion. Okay. Okay. No questions for me. So continuing. So nature of this, okay, plenty of movements happened. Okay, Jat movement, Afghan movement, Sikh. These three are the important ones. Please refer to, you can read your textbook if you want to know more about the different quarrels. I am taking the important points. That doesn't mean you should not read the textbook. Okay, please do read the textbook. There are plenty of battles that have been written in that textbook. Not so much important. That is why I am not focusing much into that. Okay, for example, in Northeastern campaign, there has been plenty of instances where Mir Jumla advances and they will reply and then more fight, more fight. One side wins in one time, other side gets advantage in another time. So such instances goes on and on. I have only given you the final picture. Okay, that is the important picture that we have to study. So that's what I gave you. In between minor battles and all, if you want to know more about it, please look into the textbook. You can always read it from there. Don't get too much confused. That's all. Anyway, Jat movement, Afghan movement, and Sikh movement. So all these movements happened during the time of Aurangzeb. But all these movements were different in nature. For example, Rajputs rebelled against Aurangzeb. Why? Because Mughal dynasty basically interfered into the problem of succession. We will study that in the upcoming slides. Marathas rebelled. Why? Because Marathas wanted local independence, Swarajya, okay, which was not accepted by the Mughals initially. Jats rebelled. Why? The cause was actually an agrarian background. Okay, we will look into that, but just understand that all these rebellions, again, Sikh movement. Sikh movement is perhaps the only movement in which religion played a very important role. Then again, against Afghans. Afghans, I mean, Mughals versus Afghans has been going on for a very long time, and it just continued. That's it. Okay, so for each of these movements, the cause was different. So the nature of movements are themselves very, very different. So let's take a couple of these at first. Jats and Satnamis. So the first section which came into conflict with the Mughals are the Jats. Okay, in the Agra region. Okay, Agra Delhi belt. That is where this happened, in the sides of the river Yamuna. So Jats are mostly peasant cultivators, and only a very few of them are zamindars. Mostly they are peasant cultivators. In 1669, Jats of Mathura region broke out in rebellion under the leadership of a local zamindar named as Gokula. So Aurangzeb decided that he will march there in person and quell this rebellion. And he did it. He went in there in person and he thoroughly defeated the Jats. In 1672, another very famous rebellion occurred known as the Satnami rebellion. And Satnamis were basically a religious body, mostly consisting of peasants, artisans, and the so-called low caste people. Okay, and it is very interesting to note that in this rebellion, Hindu zamindars, many of the Rajputs, etc., joined in the side of Mughals against the peasants, artisans, etc., etc. Why? Okay, that is a different question. It's not given in this textbook, but I think it's all given very well in your spectrum textbook. Okay, why this happened and all. I mean, simple reason being, the Satnamis are basically peasants, artisans, and lower caste people. So the big zamindars, the big Hindu nobles, all of them did not want these sections to rise against them. Okay, so they are sided with the Mughals, the powerful aristocratic faction in India, basically sided with the ruling class. That's all. Okay, it is a very common trend, and they just continued it. In 1685, Jats again arose in rebellion. A second rebellion of Jats happened, and this was done under the leadership of very famous person known as Raja Ram. And they went into guerrilla warfare method of attack. So Aurangzeb, what did he do now? He approached a very famous personality known as Raja Bishan Singh. He was the ruler of Kachavaha. Okay, Kachavaha is a faction of Rajputs, and Aurangzeb deputed Raja Bishan Singh to crush this uprising. And by 1691, Raja Ram and his successor Churaman were compelled to submit. So again, a victory for Mughals. But later in 18th century, taking advantage of the Mughal civil wars and the weakness of the Central Empire, Churaman was able to carve out a separate Jat principality in the area and to oust the Rajput zamindars. Okay, so Suraman managed to create a Jat state. When in the 18th century, the Mughal dynasty basically collapsed. Okay, so in the end, the finals, smile was on the face of the Jats. Although Mughals won many battles in the earlier phases under Aurangzeb. Now, Afghans. So Afghans were basically occupying the northwestern part of India. Okay, towards modern day Afghanistan region, the Punjab and the Kabul region. So their incursions in these regions were nothing new. A faction of Afghans were also there in eastern India. We have already learned about the Suri dynasty and all. But there were another faction in northwestern part of India. And their skirmishes has been partly economic in nature and partly political and religious also. Economic reason, what is the economic reason? Simple, because Afghan region is not so fertile. It is not possible to survive and sustain huge armies from the productivity of those arid regions. So they wanted to extend regions into areas which are more productive and all. So they tried to come into the Mughal dynasty. That's it. Political reasons, same, extension of territory, etc. etc. Religious reason, I don't have to say that again. Plenty, I have explained it lots of times. In 1667, okay, a person known as Phagu, the leader of the Yusufzai tribe, proclaimed as a king a person named as Muhammad Shah, who claimed that he's a descendant from a very royal lineage, etc. etc. And Phagu himself proclaimed as the Wazir. Okay, and then they started a religious revivalist movement named as Roshanai, which emphasized on strict ethical life and devotion to a chosen pir. Okay, and this movement which was going on in this region basically gave momentum to the Afghan rebellion that happened in the 1670s. Okay, and when this rebellion, this was more of an intellectual movement, bringing up the ethical values, moral values, religious values, etc., etc. Just like the Renaissance. Okay, after Renaissance, there occurred huge changes and rebellions in Europe. Same happened here. This intellectual movement basically gave the momentum and the base for the Afghan rebellion. And this Afghan rebellion basically brought the Khyber Pass to a standstill. Khyber Pass is the main trade route in the northwestern border. So Khyber Pass getting into a standstill is like modern day Suez Canal getting blockaded. Alright, so Aurangzeb deputed the chief Bakshi Amir Khan to break down this rebellion, and the Afghan resistance was thoroughly broken by Amir Khan. There was a second uprising in 1672, and this time it was led by the Afridi leader Akmal Khan, who proclaimed himself as the king and read khutbah in his own name and all. Again, Khyber Pass was closed, and this time Amir Khan was not able to do much. He had to suffer a very humiliating defeat. Around 10,000 of his men were massacred. All right, and in this rebellion, some of the inherent enemies of Aurangzeb, such as the tribesmen of Khushal Khan Khattak, etc., fought on the side of Akmal Khan. So anyway, a thoroughly humiliating departure for the Mughals. So what did Aurangzeb do? In 1674, a Mughal noble named as Shujat Khan was sent to, restore the situation. Only problem was he too was thoroughly defeated. Okay, but I mean he merely managed to escape with his own life, and that too with the help of the Rathors sent by Jaswant Singh. Mughal, I mean the Rajputs were still very cordial with the Mughal Empire, so Jaswant Singh sent a band of Rathors to help Shujat Khan, and with their help he managed to escape with his life. So finally Aurangzeb had enough. So in 1674, later that year, Aurangzeb himself marched to Peshawar, and he remained in the neighborhood for a very long time, for almost an year in 1675. And by using force, diplomacy, etc., etc., he managed to cause internal calamities among the Afghans, and finally, by making his enemies quarrel each other, Aurangzeb managed to take control of the situation. And very slowly, the peace in Khyber Pass was restored. Okay, so from these rebellions, it is very clear that sentiments of resistance to Mughal rule uh, and this urge for religious freedom was not confined to the sections of Hindus. Okay, this aspiration of wanting to oust the Mughals was not confined to the Hindus. Even the Afghans are Muslims. So Afghans wanted that, various sections, tribe people, etc., etc. All of them wanted to oust the Mughals. Clear? At the same time, lots of Hindus wanted to continue this Mughal suzerainty as well. For example, these Rajputs, they had a very cordial relationship with Mughals by this time, so they all supported Mughals. Earlier also we saw that in that Satnami rebellion and all, many Hindu zamindars and nobility actually sided with the Mughals. Clear? So not completely religious, but at the same time, there were sections who wanted to oust the Mughals and there were sections who wanted to continue the Mughal suzerainty. But anyway, the problem was these rebellions cost Aurangzeb a lot. Why? Because these prevented Aurangzeb from focusing on to his Deccan affairs, especially when Shivaji was gaining power. Okay, so these rebellions distracted Aurangzeb and gave Shivaji ample amount of time to build a very powerful empire named as Marathas. Now, the third one, Sikhs. So, as far as the Sikhs are concerned, I hope you remember there were certain skirmishes between Shah Jahan and the Sikh Guru. But afterwards, there was nothing much, okay? There was no clash between Sikhs and Aurangzeb till the year 1675. Okay? And Aurangzeb knew the importance of the Sikhs. Okay, they were growing in numbers, they were growing in popularity. So he tried to engage Ram Rai. Ram Rai was the eldest son of Guru Hari Rai. Okay, so Aurangzeb tried to maintain a very cordial relationship with Ram Rai, expecting that Ram Rai might be the next successor of Sikh dynasty, the next Guru of Sikh dynasty. So if he had very good relationship with them, Sikhs also will support them. That was the plan. Only problem was Guru Hari Rai was displeased with Ram Rai and nominated as his successor a younger son named as Harkishan. So Aurangzeb's plans collapsed. Okay, and Harkishan died very soon after, and in 1664 he was succeeded by Guru Tegh Bahadur, the ninth Sikh Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur. So obviously Ram Rai did not like this. Okay, the eldest son of Guru Hari Rai did not like this. So Ram Rai put forward his claims to the throne, to the Sikh, leadership. Okay, and Aurangzeb, he decided to keep some distance. He did not interfere in these succession issues directly. But Ram Rai, he remained in Delhi itself, and he poisoned Aurangzeb's ears on engaging into this and making him the next Sikh Guru, etc., etc. So basically, Aurangzeb was influenced by Ram Rai into looking into the Sikh affair. In 1675, Guru Tegh Bahadur was brought to Delhi from his headquarters with some of his followers. Okay, there are plenty of reasons for this. If you want to know all the reasons, read the textbook. Okay, I am not saying this because most of these reasons are unproven and most of these reasons are already refuted by the historians. It's considered as baseless. And some of these reasons includes, very mysterious reasons, such as, say, Guru Tegh Bahadur was asked to do some miracle works in front of Aurangzeb. If he cannot perform that, then he is not a real Guru. Okay, such demands were put forth by Ram Rai, etc. Such various arguments are there. If you want to read it, just read from textbook. But anyway, plenty of accusations were made against the Guru. And finally, as a punishment, Guru was beheaded. Okay, Guru was initially asked to recant his faith and join Islam. When Guru said no to that, when Guru rejected it, he was executed. Okay, and this actually led to the Sikh movement gradually turning into a military brotherhood. Until now, Sikh movement is a rebellion, yeah, but it is not actually a military organized kind of thing. But executing Guru Tegh Bahadur was another huge blunder committed by Aurangzeb. This actually turned the Sikhs against the Mughals, and alienated one of the strongest sections of society. Guru Gobind Singh, the last Sikh Guru, the 10th Sikh Guru, you know what happened, founded the military brotherhood named as Khalsa. The Khalsa Panth, okay, in 1699. It was the 10th Sikh Guru, the writer of Guru Granth Sahib. Okay, the person who completed the Guru Granth Sahib. He is the one who founded Khalsa, the military brotherhood of Sikhs. And then there occurred an open breach between Guru and the Hill Rajas of Punjab, which happened in 1704. Okay, there were plenty of Hindu Rajas in the hill regions of Punjab and that Sikh region. And there occurred an open fight between Guru and these minor Rajas. Okay, but Guru was obviously by now very powerful. He had a huge followership, huge popularity, and militarily also he is very well organized now. So these Hindu Rajas could not do much against Guru. So these Rajas, what did they want? I mean, they asked the Mughal government to intervene. Okay, from here you have to understand that primarily the Sikh rebellion and the Mughal reply to the Sikh rebellion was not religious in character. It is called as a religious, I mean, historians believe that there is a religious angle to it. Yes, maybe. But primarily the reason was not exactly religious. Why? Because it is the Hindu Rajas calling a Muslim king to intervene against the Sikhs. Why? Because there are political differences between the Guru and the Rajas. That's it. But eventually it becomes religious in nature. Beheading Guru Tegh Bahadur was also more or less, had religious angle, but at the same time it is Ram Rai who is poisoning Aurangzeb's ears. Okay, so all these angles had to be kept in mind while you write answers about these kinds of rebellions. But anyway, in this battle, Mughal forces assaulted Anandpur. Anandpur is the region where the Guru is at this moment. But the Sikhs fought very bravely and bravely beat off all these assaults. But finally, the Sikh fort was invested or besieged by the Mughals. Starvation began, and Mughal army promised that they will be given safe conduct if they surrender. Okay, Wazir Khan was the commander. He promised safe conduct for the Guru and the disciples if they surrender. But he betrayed his promise, and two of Guru's sons were captured. And on their refusal to embrace Islam, both of them were beheaded at Sirhind. Later on, in a different battle, Guru lost his other two sons. So all the sons of Gurus were killed in different battles against Mughals. After this, Guru Tegh Bahadur retired to Guru Gobind Singh retired to Talwandi and was generally not disturbed. Okay, so this brings us to the end of Sikh rebellion. But you have to understand what happened afterwards, which we have, I think, looked into in modern Indian classes. That deals with, Khalsa being, Khalsa going on into more and more rebellions and become more and more militarily powerful, etc., etc. Anyway, relationship with Rajputs, that is the breach with Marwar and Mewar. So from the beginning of Mughal dynasty, or say from the consolidation of Mughal dynasty in the time of Akbar, till Shah Jahan's time, we see that there has been very cordial relationship with Mughals and Rajputs. Even in Aurangzeb's reign, the relationship was very good, except with some of the Rajput houses, especially Marwar and Mewar. Mewar and Marwar has always been in quarrel with Mughal dynasty. If you remember, Mewar was one Mughal house which Akbar could not bring into submission. It was Jahangir's diplomacy which finally brought Mewar into the Mughal alliance. I hope you remember that. Shah Jahan basically continued a very good policy, religiously liberal policy towards the Rajputs. So there hasn't been too much issues with the Rajputs. But Aurangzeb, due to his religious orthodox methods, managed to bring up an old strife. Any questions? Dara Shikoh's religious attitude was anyway comparable to that of Akbar's liberal views. Yes, Dara Shikoh's religious attitude was he was basically following what was set up by the Mughal dynasty for a very long time. Okay, Akbar had a very liberal attitude towards religion. Religious liberalism was Akbar's, founding stones of consolidation. This was continued by Jahangir and his son Shah Jahan as well. Dara Shikoh basically continued that religious policy. That's all. So yeah, that policy established by Akbar was continued. In general, that is why in one of the previous classes I said so. In general, most of the fundamental nature of Mughal dynasty, which was set up by Akbar, was more or less continued throughout the dynasty until Aurangzeb. Okay, so the fundamentals of Mughal dynasty does not change for a very long time. It began under Akbar. It lasted for a very long time, and it was Aurangzeb who brought in these changes. Until then, it was more or less the same. Then, is there any difference of Akbar's northwestern policies to Aurangzeb's northwestern policies? Then again, Akbar's northwestern policies were basically because of the necessity to prevent foreign incursions. Okay, Safavid dynasty, Uzbeks, all these people were creating headache for Akbar. There was no scientific border in the northwestern areas for India at that time. So it was necessary for Akbar to establish such a line. The Kabul-Kandahar-Ghazni line was Akbar's consolidation. He consolidated that line of defense for India, making the Hindu Kush mountains the natural boundary. So that was Akbar's contribution. I think I explained this in that class. For Aurangzeb, he did not concentrate into the northwestern region in the same way as Akbar did. Aurangzeb went there for specific purposes. It is not to fight against Uzbeks or anything. It's more or less to fight against, say, his rivals, or to say quench some rebellions, etc., and to clear trade routes in Khyber Pass region and all. Okay, he is not, history does not actually compare him or relate him in any way to the Kabul-Kandahar-Ghazni line. He just inherited a huge empire and he maintained it. That's all. Okay, he had to go there and take care of certain internal disturbances, but that defense, that natural defense, has already been set by Akbar. So Aurangzeb did not have to do too much there. But later on, we will see that this, say, minor neglect of Aurangzeb towards the northwestern provinces or the northwestern boundary is also one of the contributors to the decline of Mughal dynasty. Okay, we will study that. In Aurangzeb's Deccan policy, Aurangzeb enters into a huge war with the Marathas. He spends about 25 years in South India, thereby neglecting the Delhi throne, the northeast, the northwest, everything. And this neglect of Aurangzeb basically gives some kind of autonomy or some kind of, that independence, minor independence to these kings who are situated in different further part of the empire. And this encourages more and more division within the Mughal empire and eventually causes the decline and disintegration of this dynasty. Okay, so breach with the Marwar and Mewar. So Jahangir basically continued Akbar's policy of giving favors to leading Rajputs and all. We studied this yesterday. Shah Jahan also maintained a very good alliance with Rajputs. But very important point, during the time of Shah Jahan, no Rajput Raja was assigned as or was appointed as the governor of a province. Okay, although Shah Jahan was actually a son of a Rajput princess, or Rajput princess married to Jahangir, still Shah Jahan did not appoint a single Rajput Raja as a governor of any of the province during his reign. Also, no further matrimonial relationships were made with Rajputs. This does not mean that Shah Jahan completely abandoned the Rajput policy. No, he did not have to make these matrimonial relationships because the relationship between Rajputs and Mughals were already very cordial. So there was no political need for such marital alliances. Okay, remember at those times when these emperors and rajas marry to a different kingdom and all, more or less it is because of political alliances and all. Okay, it's not based on love or anything. It's more confined into political gains. Okay, so Shah Jahan, by this time of Shah Jahan, there was no need for that because already the relationships were very cordial. So Shah Jahan did not intend to take on that activities. But anyway, the relationship with Rajputs and Mughals remained very cordial. And Shah Jahan accorded very high honors to some of the leading houses of the Rajputs, such as Jodhpur and Amber. Raja Jaswant Singh, the ruler of Marwar, and Jai Singh held huge mansabdars under Aurangzeb also, like 7,000. Okay, 7,000 is some of the actually the highest mansabdar ever given to the nobles. Okay, 7,000 has been given to, in Akbar's time, I think it's given to the Mirbakshi of that time, Raja Man Singh, okay, etc. etc. So it was given to only very prominent personalities at that time, and it was here given to two Rajput nobles, Rajas, that is Raja Jaswant Singh and Raja Jai Singh, by Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb attached very good value, a great value to the alliance with Rajputs. Okay, why? I mean, because Aurangzeb knew the importance of Rajputs to the Mughal throne. Jaswant Singh had actually fought against Aurangzeb in the Tharmat battle. Okay, Jaswant Singh helped Dara Shikoh. Okay, I hope you remember earlier, Dara Shikoh wrote letters to Rajput houses, especially to Jaswant Singh and Rana of Udaipur for help. But Rana had already promised help to Aurangzeb. But Jaswant Singh fought on side of Dara against Aurangzeb in the Battle of Tharmat. So Aurangzeb could have treated him very harshly and taken away all his mansabdari, etc., etc. But Aurangzeb decided to take the high ground here. He pardoned Jaswant Singh and restored all the previous mansabdari. Okay, and the relationship was very cordial till he died in the year 1678. I mean, Jaswant Singh. Okay, but problem occurred later on. When Jaswant Singh died, he did not had any male issue, which means he did not had any sons, legal heirs. So the question of succession came into the picture. Who will become the next king? So there was a long-standing tradition in the Mughal dynasty that in case of a disputed succession, the Mughals usually brought that state into the Mughal administration to ensure law and order. Okay, if there is a succession battle happening in, say, a place called X, okay, then Mughal dynasty will take over X. And until a ruler emerges as the next, victorious as the next king, Mughal dynasty will take care of this territory and take care of the law and order problems and all. Okay, and after the succession battle, when one prince emerges victorious, this territory will be restored back to that king. That was an tradition which was continued in Mughal dynasty. So here also the same thing happened. Okay, so when this war of succession happened after Jaswant Singh's death, Aurangzeb anticipated resistance from the Rathors. Rathors were the main clans there, the warring factions at that time. So Aurangzeb expected huge resistance from these factions. So he allotted 2 paraganas to Marwar for maintenance of the family and supporters of Jaswant Singh. Okay, I mean, Jaswant Singh has died, so his family needs support. So Aurangzeb allotted 2 paraganas for the maintenance of the family and relations. Also, to prevent huge law and order situations, Aurangzeb amassed a huge army, very strong army. Rani Hari, the chief queen of Jaswant Singh, who has been objecting to handing over charge of Jodhpur to the Mughals, had no option but to submit. Okay, so Jaswant Singh's wife, chief queen Rani Hari, she did not like the idea of handing over the kingdom to the Mughals. Okay, this was a traditional practice. Mughals will take over the kingdom until until a successor emerge as victorious in the succession battle, and then it is restored back. But Rani Hari did not like that idea. She did not want to give the kingdom into the hands of the Mughals. So she was determined to fight it out with the help of Rathors. Aurangzeb obviously came with a huge, strong army, and Rani had no choice but to submit. And because of the way in which these resistances occurred, Aurangzeb was very angry, and he destroyed and demolished lots of temples. Lots of temples were destroyed and demolished by Aurangzeb. So basically, Mughals behaved as conquerors. Okay, basically Mughals should have behaved as somebody who just like United Nations. Okay, United Nations comes in and maintains peace. That should have been the aim of Mughals also. But rather than doing that, they came in like invaders and basically looted and say behaved in a very harsh and hostile manner. And there was no justification for this. Okay, they should not have done that, but they did it anyway. But Aurangzeb obviously did not have any kind of intention to retain all these territories. So what happened? What happened was two sons of Yashwant, this Rani, born at Lahore, not Rani Hadi, two other Ranis, born at Lahore, uh, were born at Lahore after his death, after Jashwant Singh's death. Okay, during Jashwant Singh's death, he did not have any sons. But two of his Ranis eventually, after some more time, gave birth to Jashwant Singh's sons. They were pregnant, but they gave birth only after some more time. So now there are two male heirs to the throne. So Aurangzeb decided that he will award the Tikka or the throne of Jodhpur to Inder Singh, the grandson of Jashwant Singh's elder brother Amar Singh. So rather than giving the throne to either of these two legal heirs, Aurangzeb gave the throne to the grandson of Jashwant Singh's brother Amar Singh in return for some succession fees and all. Okay, so Aurangzeb thought that by doing so, you can actually now divide the state of Marwar into two branches of family, the Jashwant Singh branch and the Amar Singh branch. So Marwar was a very strong opponent of Mughal dynasty, a voiceful critic throughout the reign. So by dividing this dynasty, Aurangzeb thought that you can, vanquish a popular power among the Rajputs. Only problem is that it backfired. Why? Because Mughals are now trying to interfere with the succession wars in Rajput dynasty, Rajput houses. Most of the Rajput kings did not like this idea. Mughals interfering in their internal problems. So the Rathore Sardars, led by Durga Das, rejected this proffered compromise. And Aurangzeb ordered that the princes and their mothers be put in confinement fort of Nurga. Okay, these two princes and their mothers should be put in confinement at a fort at Nurga. So just think about it. How would the Rajputs feel about it? Okay, Rajputs are very famous for their valor, their courage, and Rajput women used to perform johar to avoid, to maintain their dignity and all, their pride and dignity, etc., etc. So now the emperor, of Mughals, are asking to confine these two princes, the legal princes, as well as their mothers, the Ranis, in a confinement fort in Nurga. This was considered as a huge insult. Okay, so those families among the Rajputs who supported Aurangzeb so far also turned against him. Clear? So now Rathore Sardars made their escape from Agra along with one of these princes and crowned this prince as Ajit Singh at Jodhpur. Out of these two princes, one of them, these Rathore Sardars managed to escape with one of those princes. They installed this prince in the throne of Jodhpur under the name Ajit Singh. So Aurangzeb obviously did not like this. He marched to Ajmer. And on seeing Aurangzeb approaching, Durga Das fled with Ajit Singh to Mewar. They did not have any chance against the mighty Mughal Empire. So Ajit Singh basically fled. Then Mewar entered the war on the side of Ajit Singh. Okay, Durga Das fled with Ajit Singh to Mewar, and Mewar also entered the war on side of Ajit Singh. So opposed to the Mughal interference in internal affairs of Rajputs. This is the prime reason why Rajputs turned against the Mughals, because Mughals interfered in the internal affairs of Rajputs. So far, just think about Akbar. Akbar conquered Rajput territory, maybe through war or through diplomacy or through matrimonial alliances. If he in whatever way he did that, as long as the Rajput states accepted his suzerainty, he allowed autonomy and local administration to that Raja. He did not interfere with that. As long as the Rajputs accepted the Mughal suzerainty as well as paid an annual tribute to the emperor. So that kind of independence were given to, say, the Rajput Rajas and houses by Akbar, by Jahangir, by Shah Jahan, etc., etc. But now, for no reason at all, Aurangzeb has interfered with an internal affairs of Rajput state. So this was highly insulting for Rajputs, and they basically turned against Aurangzeb. Okay, but anyway, in the upcoming war against Mewar combined with Jodhpur, Aurangzeb struck the first blow in November 1679, and eventually it came into a stalemate. These Rajput Rajas escaped in the forest, and there they conducted guerrilla fight, and Mughals were not so much experienced with that, and the Rajputs had no chance against Mughals in a plain ground. So eventually the war became a very stalemate kind of scenario, and nobody won, and it was a standstill. And when Aurangzeb was taking care of all these things, his own son, named as Akbar II, Prince Akbar, he tried to take advantage of the situation and tried to turn his arms against Aurangzeb. So Aurangzeb's son himself quarreled or say rebelled against Aurangzeb. Okay, so you can see this. Or when Aurangzeb pursue these kinds of policies towards states which are far away from Delhi, immediately the throne in Delhi is threatened. Same thing happened with Northwest also. When Aurangzeb focused too much on other areas, those areas which are distant from the emperor's seat began to claim independence or started to rebel or whatever. So obviously, it is very clear from all these that Aurangzeb's policy towards Marwar and Mewar has been clumsy and blundering. For no reason, he has alienated one of the strongest forces who were allied to Mughals. But anyway, the breach with Marwar and Mewar weakened the Mughal alliance with the Rajputs at a very crucial time. They wanted people like the Rajputs in their army if they had any chance or if they wanted to fight long wars in Deccan. Just think about it. When Akbar went on to that very famous Gujarat battle, Akbar entrusted Raja Bharmal, okay, with the throne in Delhi, Agra, no, not Delhi, Agra. Okay, the women's where the fort and palace where the royal women resided, were actually entrusted to the Raja Bharmal by Akbar. He had that kind of trust in this Rajput Raja. But now look where Aurangzeb has taken that relationship. Okay, Rajputs has been completely alienated, and when Aurangzeb pursued his Deccan policy against the Marathas, these Rajputs could have been of great help, but now completely weakened. Anyway, all this created doubts that the firmness of Mughal support to the old and trusted allies and the ulterior motives of Aurangzeb. This is another angle. So those people who has been loyal and huge friends and allies of Mughals for a very long time. Okay, for about 3-4 generations, Rajputs has been very close allies of Mughals. And even such relationships has been neglected or dismantled by Aurangzeb just like that. So such alliances also began to be questioned. In the future, we will see that the kings do not actually trust the Mughal Empire to keep their word. Why? Because of these kinds of activities. Okay, if you are entering into a friendship, then both sides are to keep it. I mean, both sides should try to uphold it. It's not entirely up to one side, and it should not be one-sided. So anyway, all these policies of Aurangzeb was a series of blunders which cost a lot to the Mughal Empire. Okay, how much it did cost the Mughal Empire, we will see when we study about Marathas in the second chapter. If Aurangzeb had the backing of Rajputs in his Maratha campaign, things would have been way different. But because he lacked it, it became much more easier for Shivaji and his successors to put Aurangzeb at check for a very long time. Okay, so we are going into the second chapter, the climax and disintegration of Mughal Empire, part 2, that will deal with Marathas. I will be taking it today itself. I know that it is already too much for you. So those who feel saturated or those who feel too much overwhelmed, please pause the video here and come back later. See the rest of it. If you have any queries, you can always personally WhatsApp me your question. My WhatsApp number is given in this Telegram channel. Okay, you can always look into that. but I'm continuing here. If you feel you can continue, do so. Okay, any questions? Okay, no. Moving on. The rise of Marathas. So Marathas had very important positions in administrative and military systems in South Indian kingdoms. Okay, Ahmednagar, Bijapur. I think I already explained this in the previous classes when I explained Akbar's Deccan policy, Jahangir's Deccan policy, and all. Marathas were very important. Every Central Indian king, including Malik Ambar, wanted Marathas in his army. They were that good. Okay, so Ahmednagar, Bijapur, everybody recruited Marathas. Marathas by themselves did not had a very large state or anything. Okay, Marathas were not such an organized large state, unlike Rajputs. Rajputs were very strong, organized state at that time. Marathas were not like that. The credit of making the Marathas into a state goes to Shaji Bhonsle and his son Shivaji. Okay, Shaji Bhonsle and his son Shivaji, Chhatrapati Shivaji, are two people who are credited to have created what is known as the Maratha Empire. So how did that happen? What is Shivaji's early part of life, etc., etc.? We are going to see. Most of the stories you already know. Okay, I am not going to explain it too much, but we will quickly look into all that and move on. So I hope you remember how did Shaji Bhonsle change sides. Okay, earlier he fought in the sides of Mughals, but later on he changed sides. I hope you remember why. Okay, regarding South Indian politics and all, that was a blunder committed by one of the Mughal emperors. If you had listened to my previous classes, you would definitely know what caused this. Okay, anyway, Shaji had left Pune Jagir to his neglected wife Jijabai. Okay, towards his death, after his death, Shaji's Jagir in Pune was actually given to his senior wife Jijabai and his minor son Shivaji. Okay, so Shivaji was a very able, very creative and very good administrator, military general, or whatever. Okay, so through his prowess, Shivaji overran a number of hill forts near Pune, such as Rajgarh, Kondana, Torna, etc., etc. And Shivaji during earlier days was taken care of by his guardian Dadaji Kondadev. Just like Akbar had Bairang Khan, it was Dadaji Kondadev who acted as guardian for Shivaji. After Dadaji Kondadev's death, Shivaji became his own master, finally in the year 1647. And again, he continued his policy of invasions and all into the neighboring areas. And the conquest of Javli was a very important conquest in the sense he became the undisputed master of Mawala area, which is very important strategically. Okay, it is a highland area and it is very strategic in the sense that this freed the path to the Satara area and the coastal strip of Konkan. So if you have control over the Mawala area, you have better chances in Satara and Konkan. So Shivaji managed to capture Javli and thereby becoming the undisputed leader in the Mawala area. So now, once these Marathas started to assert this kind of power, Mughals were obviously not happy with it. Aurangzeb was keeping an eye on the Central Indian politics. So Shivaji first entered into negotiations with Aurangzeb. Okay, and then he changed sides and made deep inroads to Mughal areas. So initially, Shivaji was not, he did not want a direct conflict with Mughals because Marathas are still finding themselves. But very soon, he changed his strategy and he made several incursions into the Mughal dynasty areas. And he seized rich bounty and etc. When Aurangzeb came in terms with the new Bijapur ruler in preparation for the civil war, he pardoned Shivaji also. So Aurangzeb also did not want a direct fight with Shivaji at this time because he was trying to consolidate the empire. Okay, everywhere there were plenty of rebellions, Jat rebellion, Satnami rebellion, Sikh rebellion. He was fed up with rebellion. So he was, Rajputs are also not, any more good friends. So he wanted to have some stability. So he tried to avoid a war with the Marathas at this point of time. So when he pardoned off the Bijapur Sultans for preparing for war and all, he pardoned Shivaji also. Okay, let's not fight at this point of time. And Aurangzeb, left these Deccan affairs and he was concentrating into the northern region, as I have mentioned earlier. Okay, he was focused onto the northern affairs, and this gave Shivaji some time, okay, away from the attention of the Mughal emperor to do his business. Shivaji conquered or resumed his career of conquest at the expense of Bijapur. Okay, so Bijapur rulers were not happy with Shivaji's incursions into their territory. So what did they do? Bijapuri noble Afzal Khan was sent to capture and defeat Shivaji. Okay, so they were, Afzal Khan is very, very good general, very able personality, very cunning, very treacherous. Okay, so Afzal Khan, what he did was he went into the battleground, and rather than picking up a fight with Shivaji, he arranged for a meeting. Okay, he arranged a meeting with Shivaji, saying that if Shivaji comes along, then he will gain or he will vouch for favorable treatment of Shivaji and all, etc., etc. Basically, it was treachery. The plan was when Shivaji comes, he will be sacked and arrested and put into jail. That was the plan. Only problem was Shivaji was even more cunning. Okay, so Shivaji knew that this was Afzal Khan's plan all along. So he went prepared, and when he entered the room, he murdered Afzal Khan in 1659. Okay, and then once the leader Afzal Khan was killed, Shivaji basically ran through the entire army, which means basically routed out Afzal Khan's army and inflicted huge humiliation to the Bijapuri forces. So these exploits of Shivaji made him extremely a legendary figure, a very popular personality in South Indian politics or in the Deccani politics. Okay, so people flocked to become his followers and to join his army from all over the place. The Afghani mercenaries who used to fight with Bijapur, etc., also abandoned Bijapur and came and joined in the side of Shivaji. So through his, vibrant activities, Shivaji immediately became a very legendary figure in South India among the Marathas. Very popular, very powerful. Okay, so Aurangzeb was not happy. Okay, Aurangzeb was taking care of the northern affairs, and Shivaji here southern affairs has gone berserk. Okay, so he did not want a strong power in south to cause fresh troubles. So Aurangzeb sent the new governor of Mughals in Deccan, named as Shaista Khan, to invade Shivaji's dominions. If you remember, earlier I told you, Shaista Khan was then taken into the eastern affairs, and he is credited to have, conquered the Arakanese pirates and all. Okay, I hope you remember that. We studied that in the beginning of this chapter. Anyway, Shaista Khan was deputed into the Deccan affairs and, to take over Shivaji's Deccan dominions. And at first, the war went hugely terrible for Shivaji. Okay, Shaista Khan was very good, and Shivaji did not even stand a chance. A huge defeat for Shivaji, especially because of the Mughal artillery forces. Shivaji is great in guerrilla warfare and all, but on a plain ground, there is no power in India at that time who could have dealt with the Mughals. Mughals had superior artillery, best cavalry, huge army. Okay, so in a plain ground battle, South Indian kingdoms did not stand a chance. So Shivaji had huge setbacks at the beginning of the war. So that night, Shivaji infiltrated Shaista Khan's camp at Pune and attacked Khan in his harem. Okay, and one of his sons of Khan was killed. Many people were injured. Khan himself was injured, and overall, this was a huge humiliation to the Mughals. The opponent infiltrating the Mughal camp at night and doing all these terrible things. Huge humiliation to the Mughals. Aurangzeb was extremely angry on hearing this news, and he immediately transferred Shaista Khan to Bengal. Usually, when one person is transferred, that person will have a meeting with the emperor. Okay, that is the custom. The emperor will meet that person and tell him about the transfer, and that is how it is done. But Aurangzeb was so angry that he avoided meeting Shaista Khan and directly asked him to go to Bengal. But in Bengal, Shaista Khan does a very good job. Even here, Shaista Khan was doing a good job, except that Shivaji messed it up. Okay, but once Shaista Khan was taken away, Shivaji attacked Surat. Surat was one of the premier Mughal ports. Okay, Surat is very important. I don't think I have to explain it why. Okay, so Shivaji attacked Gujarat, and now Aurangzeb understood that this should not be allowed to continue. Okay, Shivaji has done enough, and we are not allowing him to expand any further. So Aurangzeb deputed one of his most trusted nobles, or most trusted Rajas, Raja Jai Singh of Amber. Raja Jai Singh of Amber had huge mansabs under Mughals, under Aurangzeb, and he was a very trusted personality of Aurangzeb. And this is one of the houses of Rajputs which were still very loyal and very cordial with Mughals. So Raja Jai Singh of Amber was sent to deal with Shivaji. But unlike Shaista Khan, who may have underestimated the opponent, Raja Jai Singh was very clever. He did not underestimate the Marathas, and he made very careful diplomatic and military preparations. Okay, and Jai Singh decided to strike at the heart of Shivaji's territories, that is the fort of Purandhar, where Shivaji has kept his family and his treasure. This is a very crucial fort, the fort of Purandhar, very crucial for Shivaji, and Jai Singh attacked that fort. He knew that if he strike that blow, Shivaji is done. Okay, so it happened, and Jai Singh emerged victorious. I mean, Shivaji did not come up to an open fight. Shivaji had no option but to surrender because Jai Singh had a very huge army with him, and there is no way Shivaji could have won against Jai Singh. So Shivaji opened negotiations with Jai Singh. Okay, and there are certain conditions which were set up. Please look into your textbook for reading that conditions. Basically, X number of about 24 forts of Shivaji has been surrendered to the Mughals. Some of the other forts are supposed to be kept by Shivaji. Some forts are given to Bijapur in exchange for X amount, etc., etc. You can just read through that. Okay, just go through that in your textbook. But anyway, lots of negotiations were worked out. And fine, but one clause that Shivaji wanted in particular was to get avoided from personal service to the Mughal throne. Shivaji did not want to be a Mansabdar of Mughal throne. So that was actually allowed. Okay, and instead of giving Shivaji the Mansab of 5,000, it was granted to Shivaji's minor son Sambhaji. And Shivaji promised in return that in any Mughal campaign in Deccan, Shivaji will assist Mughals. Okay, so if Mughals plan to attack Golconda or say Bijapur or Ajmer, then Shivaji will back the Mughals on the Deccan campaign. This was the Treaty of Purandhar. Okay, so basically a very humiliating treaty for Shivaji, a very rewarding treaty for Aurangzeb. Okay, and this was ironed out by Jai Singh. Jai Singh was extremely a visionary personality, very clever, very beautiful diplomat, very able personality. Jai Singh cleverly threw a bone of contention between Shivaji and Bijapuri ruler. Okay, so Jai Singh knew that if you can create further differences between the different South Indian kingdoms, then Mughal territory is pretty much safe. These two will fight it out each other and Mughals can be pretty safe. So Jai Singh tried to encourage quarrels between these two kingdoms, Bijapur and Marathas. But only problem was Jai Singh's brilliant scheme depended upon Mughal support to Shivaji in making up for the Bijapur territory. Okay, so as long as Mughals had Mughals support Shivaji and vice versa, this brilliant plan of Jai Singh will work. But if anything happens to the Mughal-Maratha relationship, everything is collapsed. This was the major flaw in the plan. This eventually proved to be the fatal flaw. So what happened was, even though Jai Singh tried to bring Aurangzeb and Shivaji together and closer, Aurangzeb was not ready to give up his reservations on Shivaji. Okay, because of Shivaji's activities and incursions into Mughal empire and his Gujarat attack and all, Aurangzeb was very suspicious of Shivaji and treated him you know with that kind of distance. He was not ready to embrace Shivaji just like he did with Rajput kings. Okay, so uh, you know Jai Singh's plan had this brilliant flaw, this huge flaw. Okay, so there occurred a Mughal Maratha joint expedition against Bijapur. And according to the plan worked out, after this expedition, a considerable amount of loot and territory will be given to the Marathas. This was the plan, according to the Treaty of Purandar. Only problem was the combined expedition of Mughals and Marathas against Bijapur failed. Okay, thereby completely destroying everything that has been ironed out in Treaty of Purandar. Had this campaign succeeded and had Bijapur been, defeated, then everything that was ironed out in the Treaty of Purandar could have been upheld. X amount of territory from Bijapur could have been given to the Marathas. X amount of loot can be given to the Marathas, etc., etc. And differences can be ironed out. But this campaign failed. This became very crucial. Okay, so now Jai Singh has to do something immediately, otherwise everything is lost. So Jai Singh again, as a last hope, tried to conciliate Shivaji and Aurangzeb. So he planned a visit of Shivaji to Agra, where Aurangzeb and Shivaji will meet each other, and once they sit down and talk, Jai Singh thought that everything will be solved. Only problem was when Shivaji arrived at Agra, the meeting turned out to be a disaster. Okay, exactly opposite of what Jai Singh wanted. It turned out to be a complete disaster. So when he went there, he felt insulted. Why? Because Aurangzeb gave him a Mansabdari of 5,000. This was earlier given to his minor son Sambhaji through Treaty of Purandar. The same status is accorded to Shivaji. That is an insult for him, Shivaji. I mean, Shivaji considered this as an insult. Aurangzeb purposefully did that because he did not believe in Shivaji anyway. This was one. And number two, Emperor was celebrating his birthday and all. Okay, when Shivaji went there, it was Aurangzeb's birthday, and Emperor was engaged in activities related to that. And Emperor Aurangzeb did not even find time to speak with Shivaji. So this was considered as a huge humiliation by Shivaji, and obviously the proud Marathas did not like this, and Shivaji got angry and walked out of the court. Okay, it's not like modern days. Okay, in modern day, opposition can shout against the government and walk out of the legislative assembly. But in those days, if a subordinate king does this, it is considered as an insult to the emperor, huge insult to the emperor. So when Shivaji did this, the nobles in the Mughal court felt as this as an very huge insult to the Mughal throne, and basically asked the emperor to detain Shivaji and punish him. Only thing is, Shivaji managed to escape this detention. Shivaji was detained by Aurangzeb, and Shivaji managed to escape from this detention in 1666 when Aurangzeb was communicating with Jai Singh. Okay, Shivaji was under detention, and Aurangzeb tried to contact Jai Singh on getting his advice. Jai Singh was the person whom Aurangzeb trusted a lot, and Jai Singh was the person who almost managed to settle the Deccan affairs. And Aurangzeb believed in Jai Singh's wisdom, so he sent letters to Jai Singh on what to do next. And while this communication was going on, Shivaji escaped from his detention, thereby everything went to disarray. Okay, so the final breach with Shivaji and the Shivaji's administration and achievements. This is our next topic. So now you know that there is no way the Marathas are going to conceal with Mughals, because both sides, I mean, Aurangzeb does have zero trust on Shivaji, and Shivaji is humiliated with the treatment he got from Mughals. So these two are like India and Pakistan at the moment. Okay, so Mughal preoccupation with Afghan, I mean, Shivaji came back to the Maratha region and laid low for a long amount of time. Okay, for 2 years, he did not do any kind of active wars or any other strategies. But when the Mughals got preoccupied with Afghan uprising in the north, Shivaji again started his active campaigns and he started to cause troubles in South India. In 1674, Shivaji crowned himself formally at Raigad, and he managed to get a formal declaration from various priests, especially Ganga Bhatta, that Shivaji was a high-class Kshatriya. Okay, this practice of getting validation from Brahmanas, which was there in the ancient times, even exists now also. Okay, so by getting that validation from the Brahmana as a very powerful, mighty Kshatriya, Shivaji got that authenticity to rule over, or that validation to rule over this entire region. And this was an important step in the further growth of Maratha national movement. In 1676, Shivaji, with the active aid and support of the brothers Madanna and Akkanna, undertook an expedition to Bijapuri, Karnataka. Okay, so when Shivaji approached the Bijapuri, Karnataka region, instead of fighting him, Qutub Shah basically gave him a very formal agreement and a warm welcome. Okay, a formal agreement was made and no bloodshed, but rather than fighting, he accepted Shivaji's authority, and he was welcomed very well and entered into a formal agreement. Qutub Shah agreed to pay subsidy of 1 lakh hunds, around 5 lakh rupees annually, to Shivaji, and a Maratha ambassador was to live in his court. So basically, Karnataka, Bijapuri Karnataka area came under Shivaji's authority. And this treaty was immensely favorable for Shivaji. And this huge wealth enabled Shivaji to attack and capture Jinji, Vellore, etc., and the territories occupied by his half-brother Ekoji. Okay, Shivaji had a half-brother named as Ekoji, and his territory was also captured by Shivaji. So in some of the Hindu factions actually, prized Shivaji as Haindava Dharmothara. Okay, he assumed that Shivaji himself assumed the title of Haindava Dharmothara, or the protector of Hindu faith. But in this campaign against his half-brother Ekoji, Shivaji has actually plundered and mercilessly, very cruelly treated the Hindu population of that area. He mercilessly plundered the Hindu population of the area under his half-brother Ekoji. So again, you have to understand that in medieval India, things were not communal. Okay, not everything was based on, only very exceptional events were based on religion. Here, a very mighty Hindu ruler has mercilessly plundered Hindu population itself. So it is not religion at all. It's all politics. Also, when Hindus and Muslims attack each other, that also in medieval India, most of it was, 90% of it was basically politics rather than a communal fight. Okay, please be very clear about that. Anyway, Shivaji refused to, once he captured all these areas, according to the agreement made with Qutub Shah, okay, that Qutub Shah, who was the ruler of Bijapuri, Karnataka, some of the shares of this loot was to be given to Qutub Shah. But Shivaji did not give anything. He kept everything with himself and basically ruined the relationship with Qutub Shah. Okay, and basically the Karnataka expedition of Shivaji was considered is the last expedition, major expedition of Shivaji. After this, he basically consolidates the empire. He does not actually go beyond that. He dies in the year 1680. So by the time of his death, Shivaji has laid the foundations of a very sound system of administration, and this proved to be the base for the very strong Maratha empire, which was later on taken up by the Peshwas and eventually became very strong, that Marathas could have ruled the entire India after the Mughal dynasty if it wasn't for Ahmad Shah Abdali. Okay, if the third battle of Panipat has not taken place, maybe Marathas would have been the next major power, major all-Indian dynasty in the history of India. Okay, but the foundations of that was actually laid by Chhatrapati Shivaji. So Shivaji's administrative measures were actually borrowed hugely from Deccani states. Okay, he had this council of 8 ministers known as Ashtapradhana and all, but understand that this is not like the modern day council of ministers. Here each minister is directly responsible to the ruler. In modern day, that is not the case. Ministry is not responsible to the ruler. Ministers are responsible to the parliament. Lok Sabha, to be specific, assembly or Lok Sabha. And but in those days, Shivaji, as far as Shivaji's Ashtapradhan is concerned, the ministers are responsible to Shivaji, not anyone else. Okay, that's the difference. So you can't say that it is a council of ministers in the modern day sense. So what are the important positions in this Ashtapradhan? I have already shared a PDF regarding this in the Telegram group. You can check that if you haven't seen it already. I have shared some PDFs regarding the prominent terminologies in the administration in ancient India and medieval India, and the counter their equivalent in or what they stand for. Okay, Ashtapradhan was one of them. I have already shared it. Please go through that. But very quickly going through it, there were 8 important ministers, the most important one being Peshwa, who looked after the general administration and finances. Then we have the Sarai Naubat, who was the Senapati, who was the most important one among the nobles. Then we have Majumdar, that is the accountant. Wakia Navis, the intelligence and officer, also looked after posts and household affairs. Suru Navis, or the Chitnis, who looked into the correspondence affairs. Dabir, who was the master of ceremonies and also helped the emperor in foreign affairs. Then Nyayathish and Pandit Rao, who were in charge of justice and charitable activities respectively. These are the Ashtapradhans. You can later take it down and study it yourself. But anyway, Shivaji more or less borrowed the revenue affairs that existed in Deccan region from the Deccan Sultans, and he preferred to give cash salaries to regular soldiers, though sometimes chiefs received revenue grants known as Saranjam. Okay, Saranjam is revenue grants, just like the Jagirdari system in Mughals. Nothing different, just the name, just that the name is different. Also, maybe the rate and all are different, but a kind of Jagirdari system existed in Maratha Empire also. It was named as Saranjam. Okay, and Shivaji was very strict disciplinarian, and he maintained very strict army. No women and dancing girls were allowed to accompany the army. The regular army was known as Paga. The loose auxiliaries who followed the army was known as Shiladars. And every fort under Shivaji was kept under the charge of 3 men of equal rank. Why? Because Shivaji did not trust any of them. Okay, if one of them betrays, then you should have someone else to take over. That is why 3 people of equal ranks were given the charge of every fort. The revenue systems seem to have been in the pattern of Malik Ambar. Malik Ambar's revenue system was continued by Shivaji also. A new revenue system was actually completed by Annaji Datto in 1679. Okay, Annaji Datto, very famous noble in Shivaji's court. He actually managed to create a new revenue assessment system in 1679. Okay, that does not mean Shivaji abolished Zamindari or anything. Okay, that was continued. It was just that he changed it a bit. Okay, he modified it a bit. That's all. The traditional system of Zamindari and awarding Jagirs, etc., was very much still there under different names. Deshmukhi or say Mukasa, for example. Shivaji strictly supervised these Mirasdars also. Who are Mirasdars? Mirasdars are people who had ownership of hereditary land. Okay, so these people are very influential and can cause trouble anytime. So those people who had this ownership to hereditary lands were very keenly supervised by Shivaji. Shivaji supplemented his income by levying a contribution on the neighboring Mughal territories as well. Okay, if you don't want me to attack you, you have to pay an annual tribute. So such kind of tributes were forced on the surrounding states and came to be known as Chauth. Okay, Chauth is basically 25%, was levied at a rate of 25%, and this was levied in the neighboring Mughal territories surrounding the Maratha region. There is another thing called Sardeshmukhi also. and Sardeshmukhi is basically 10% over Chowth. These two are the taxes levied by Maratha rulers especially Shivaji in the surrounding Mughal territories. Now, Aurangzeb and the Deccani states. Is there any questions? Shivaji denied from personal service is it not like accepting Mughal suzerainty? No, Shivaji denied from personal service. No, Shivaji was not denied personal service by Aurangzeb. Shivaji wanted to be out of it. Okay, I mean Shivaji did not want to enter into the personal service of emperor. For example, Jai Singh accepted the Mansabdari of Mughals, so he is into the personal service of the emperor. Shivaji did not want that. Okay, so Shivaji basically tried to stay out of it, thereby not allowing too much Mughal control into his affairs. Maybe Shivaji used Hyndava Dharmadhara title to use Hindu ruler sentiments to collectively fight against Mughals. Yes, that is correct. No, I mean, obviously, that is the idea behind Hyndava Dharmadhara title that Shivaji took himself. I'm only saying that despite taking that title, he still mercilessly plundered Hindus, whom he was supposed to protect according to the title. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I'm not saying that he was doing this out of religious issues or anything. No, obviously he did that to unite Hindus behind him, as Mughals being is Muslims, and against the Maratha Empire and all. So that observation is accurate, Satya. All I'm saying is that even despite having that title, he still plundered the Hindus. That's all. So Marathas generally was more influential when it came to Deccan region. Is it so? Marathas generally, yes. Even during Jahangir's time, we saw that the importance of Marathas. Everybody, even Malik Ambar wanted Marathas in their side. They were very powerful. They were very courageous, valorous people. So all of them wanted them to enroll Marathas into their own armies and all. Earlier, they did not have a state of their own, but Shivaji and his father managed to consolidate a state for Marathas. And once they did that, they gained huge power, huge territory, and subdued all the surrounding states. Eventually, the Mughal dynasty became extremely weak after Aurangzeb, and basically the Mughal throne in Delhi was merely a puppet in the hands of Marathas. Okay, we will study that later on. Okay, I think already we covered that in the modern Indian session. When Ahmad Shah Abdali attacked India, the Mughal throne was basically a puppet in the hands of Shivaji. If you have seen the film Panipat, you will understand that. Marathas, not Shivaji, Marathas. Okay, Marathas give the order. Mughals could not do anything against it. Mughals were the nominal rulers. Marathas did not impose themselves into the Delhi throne, that's all. But they were virtually the rulers of India at that time. Okay, anyway, continuing. Aurangzeb and the Deccani states. It is already 7:15. I'm sorry for this elongated session. If you are feeling, say, saturated or bored, you can stop here and come back and watch the rest of the session later. Only a few more slides remaining, so I will be taking it a bit fast. We will take another 15 to 20 minutes. Okay. So Aurangzeb and the Deccani states. So Aurangzeb's policy towards Deccan can be divided into three phases. First phase that lasted till 1668, and during this phase, the main attempt was to recover Bijapur and the territories belonging to Ahmednagar. Okay, so first there are three phases. First phase ended in 1668. What happened was Mughals were concentrating on recovering the lost territories from Bijapur and from the hands of Ahmednagar. Sorry, lost territories of Ahmednagar from the hands of Bijapur. In the second phase, which lasted till 1684, the major concern was the danger of Marathas. Okay, Mughals were dealing with the Marathas. And in the last phase began when Aurangzeb, despite of getting the cooperation of Bijapur and Golconda against Marathas, decided that to destroy the Marathas, it was necessary to conquer Bijapur and Golconda first. These are the three phases of Aurangzeb's Deccan policies. or in general Mughal Deccan policy altogether. So in each of these phases, there are plenty of wars, minor battles between each other, not so much important for us. If you want to read about it, go look into your textbook. There are at least one paragraph into each of it. You can go through that and understand it better. But the summary is given in this single paragraph, single point. This is more or less enough for us. Okay, but anyway, by the Treaty of 1636, by which Shah Jahan had given 1/3 of the territories of Ahmednagar state as a bribe for withdrawing support to the Marathas, and promised that Mughals would never ever conquer Bijapur and Golconda, had been abandoned by Shah Jahan himself. Okay, so I hope I don't know if you remember this, when we studied about Shah Jahan in the previous class or even before that, when we studied about Jahangir's reign, Shah Jahan has been deputed into taking care of Deccan affairs, and at that time, Shah Jahan had made a treaty saying that if Bijapur and Golconda help against Marathas, then 1/3 of the territories of Ahmednagar will be given to them. Also, Bijapur and Golconda will never be annexed or conquered into the Mughal rule. Okay, this was the promise made by Shah Jahan, but this promise was abandoned by Shah Jahan himself towards the end of his reign. So Shah Jahan's policy of not keeping his word basically led to the loss of trust as far as Mughals are concerned. From now onwards, we see that these South Indian kings, or any kings for that matter, do not trust the Mughals for their word, because they did not keep their words to any of these kingdoms. Shah Jahan himself went back on his word. So this attitude of Shah Jahan destroyed for all times the confidence in the Mughal treaties and promises, and made impossible a union of hearts against Marathas. If Shah Jahan had not broken the trust, then probably Bijapur and Golconda would have sided with the Mughals and helped in conquering Marathas. But Shah Jahan himself broke the promise, so it prevented any kind of South Indian or Deccan help which the Mughals could have got against Marathas. So the last phase we have to see in a bit of detail. So this began with the downfall of Bijapur and Golconda. Aurangzeb was able to concentrate all his forces against Marathas. Okay, finally, after taking care of all the issues in the other parts of his empire, he focused on the Maratha campaign. In 1689, Sambhaji, while he was in Sangameshwar, he was surprisingly attacked by a Mughal force, and he was paraded in front of Aurangzeb and executed as a rebel and an infidel. This was another big blunder by Aurangzeb. By doing that, he eliminated any last remaining chance of conciliating with Marathas. The Maratha prince has been humiliated by the Mughals and executed by Aurangzeb. The younger brother of Sambhaji, named as Rajaram, was crowned as the king. Okay, but Mughals attacked the capital of the Marathas, and Rajaram fled. Okay, and Rajaram sought shelter in Jinji on the east coast of India and continued to fight the Mughals from there. Aurangzeb basically was trying to bite a bit more than what he could chew. Okay, he already had inherited a huge empire from his ancestors. So, and he already had to face lots of rebellion internally. Rajputs were also not so friendly right now. So a better policy would have been to make peace with the neighboring nations, or make peace with Marathas and all, and consolidated the existing empire. Rather than doing that, he pursued on a very aggressive policy in Deccan, and he tried to extend his territories further to Deccan, thereby creating even more problems. Okay, so the result was that in his failure to provide a sound administration to Bijapur, which was the hub of Maratha activities. So Maratha attacks continued. Aurangzeb could not do anything to protect any of the South Indian states against Marathas because of his aggressive policies, and Marathas, being excelled in guerrilla warfare, continued to create trouble for Mughals. For 5.5 years, from 1700 to 1705, Aurangzeb dragged his weary and ailing body from one siege to another and fled diseases. Marathas were finally, keeping on attacking the Mughals from various sides. The Mughal army was weary and they were fed up with war. They were demoralized. Okay, and finally, some of the Mughals actually made pacts with the Marathas that they will give, say, X amount of Jagir and all to the Marathas if they promise they won't attack us. So basically, some of the Mughal nobles themselves went into the Maratha side. That was the condition. Okay, Aurangzeb very uselessly pursued a Deccan policy, which was completely rubbish and completely weakened the Mughal Empire. In 1703, Aurangzeb opened negotiations finally. Okay, I mean, there was no way he can continue. Maratha policy was a complete failure. So in 1703, Aurangzeb opened negotiations and he prepared to release Shahu, the son of Sambhaji, grandson of Shivaji. Okay, Shahu was taken as prisoner and Aurangzeb decided to release Shahu and along with his mother. Okay, I mean, when Aurangzeb took Shahu, captured Shahu, he was not mistreated or anything. Shahu was treated very well by Aurangzeb with all respect and all. But he was still kept as a prisoner. But now he decided to release Shahu and at least thereby negotiate with Marathas and settle the Maratha affairs. And Shahu was given the title of Raja and a huge mansab of 7,000. And when the day came, a lot of Maratha Sardars assembled in order to warmly receive Shahu and his mother from the Mughals and all. And at that time, Aurangzeb somersaulted. Okay, Aurangzeb cancelled the arrangements in the last moment. Aurangzeb was even prepared to give Shahu the Shivaji's concept of Swarajya and the right of Sardeshmukhi over the Deccan. Okay, he was willing to make such huge concessions. But in the last moment, Aurangzeb altered. Why? Because of his inherent mistrust towards Marathas. From the time of Shivaji, Aurangzeb did not trust the Marathas, and even now, he did not completely trust the Marathas. He thought that Marathas are up to something else, and he changed the plans at the last time. Again, huge blunder. So basically, Aurangzeb breathed his last at Aurangabad in 1707, and he left behind an empire that was sorely distracted, in which all various internal problems were coming to a head. Okay, Aurangzeb died in 1707, leaving the Mughal Empire in a very sore spot. The Maratha policy was completely rubbish and it was not at all going well. And Mughal dynasty had to have a very strong ruler in the throne to keep everything together. And that is the state in which Aurangzeb left the Mughal dynasty when he died. Only problem was the next person who came to the throne was very weak. And then we have a series of weak kings, none of whom could do anything to consolidate the Mughal dynasty. So towards the last part of today's session, decline of the Mughal Empire and the responsibility of Aurangzeb. This is our last heading, only a few more slides and I will end it. Okay, sorry for keeping you all this long, but I want to finish this today. Don't want to extend it anymore. Very few slides remaining. This is the last topic. Okay, how much is Aurangzeb responsible for the decline of Mughals? So, all of you already know that Mughal Empire declined rapidly after the death of Aurangzeb. Okay, plenty of reasons are there. It's not just Aurangzeb. Okay, you can't blame Aurangzeb for everything. There were plenty of faction fighting among the nobles, ambitious provincial governors trying to gain independence, Maratha depredations constantly happening, and finally, as a death nail or death blow, Nadir Shah imprisoned the Mughal Emperor Muhammad Shah Rangila and looted Delhi in 1739, thereby showing to the world how weak the Mughal power has become. The Mughal Emperor has been imprisoned by Nadir Shah. Just imagine. This is the same throne where Akbar, where Jahangir or where Shah Jahan, etc. sat once. And now that emperor has been imprisoned by an invader from Central Asia. So a humiliation basically. So it exposed the weakness of Mughal dynasty to the world. Okay, so can we actually attribute everything to Aurangzeb? That is the question. Or what was the extent of Aurangzeb's mistaken policies towards the decline of Mughal dynasty? This had to be analyzed in various topics: economic, social, administrative, and intellectual. Everything contributed to it. Okay, it's not a single factor that caused the decline of Mughals. It was a multitude of factors. It is a multidisciplinary phenomenon that eventually led to the decline of Mughal dynasty. So area under Zapti, okay, that is the system of measurement was followed, expanded according to the official Mughal statistics. Okay, according to the official Mughal statistics, as more and more land came under cultivation, the area under Zapti system also expanded. So you can see a map of Mughal dynasty at this time. This is in your NCERT textbook. Please go through it. You can get some rough idea about the territories added by Aurangzeb, territories lost by Aurangzeb, and etc. etc. Okay, so during Mughal dynasty, towards the time of Aurangzeb, no new methods of cultivation were available. This is a fact. Cultivation was still very good, very efficient, but nothing new or innovative was done in the field of agriculture. Number two, land revenue was very heavy. Not too much heavy, but still, we have already seen that from the time of Akbar, around 1/2 or half of the produce was taken as taxes at various levels. So generally, land revenue was very high. And the people who had to pay these were the poor peasants, the bulk of whom were called as untouchables or Dalits. So these cultivating communities and the zamindars, who often belonged to the Shudra class and some of the upper classes, had little desire or incentive for making it possible for Dalits to settle in new villages and acquire property right there. So if these people, these peasants, were allowed to have their own land, okay, if they were allowed to settle in a new area and have land of their own, then things could have been different. These people could have found alternate means of livelihood or expanded the land of cultivation and thereby gained more income and all. But these zamindars and aristocratic people, they did not want this. They had no interest in bringing up the life quality of poor people. Okay, so the rural, landless, and poor had neither the necessary capital nor the organization needed for settling in new villages or breaking uncultivated lands on their own. So basically, these sections of the society, the poor peasants of the society, were stuck in the Mughal dynasty, and they had to, were stuck with that particular zamindar, and they had to work in those lands itself. They did not have the means to acquire or cultivate in a new uncultivated land on all by their own. Okay, and although Mughals tried to give them Takavi loans and all, still this was not enough. A lot more public expenditure had to be done, which obviously did not happen. And another important cause, the number of Mansabdars rose from 2069 at the time of Jahangir and to 11,456 during the latter half of Aurangzeb's reign. This is a point I mentioned in the previous class. The number of Mansabdars increased a huge lot. Just think about it. This is almost 5 times, okay, even more, very close to 6 times this number. So if the number of Mansabdars are less, then yeah, you can use the existing lands to pay them. But when it multiplies into about 5-6 times, you have to have that much new territories to give away. So if Aurangzeb had conquered the whole of India and towards the Central Asian region and all, maybe he could have afforded this. But the Mughal expansion did not keep pace with the increasing number of Mansabdars. If you remember, Jahangir and Shah Jahan did not follow a too much forward policy. The extent of the territories remained more or less the same as Akbar left it. Okay, only minor invasions were made into various other regions. So no new territories were added to the empire, but the number of Mansabdars has increased multiple times. Okay, also Shah Jahan has inaugurated what may be called as an age of magnificence. So this age of magnificence is a huge problem. Why? The nobles who were already paid the highest salaries in the world in Mughal dynasty, they began to live an even more luxurious life. Okay, already the economy is weakening, the number of mansabdars are increasing, and now they are all living this luxurious life, which is further deteriorating the financial position of the empire. And because of some factors that I have taught you in the previous class, for example, the favorable trade balance and all, and this lavish, luxurious lifestyle of these nobles, there occurred a price rise towards the first half of 17th century. And this price rise made huge impact on the poorer sections of the society that they couldn't even afford basic amenities. Okay, so then there were migrant peasants called as pahikashtas or uparis and all, who went from one village to another in search of better conditions and all, and they were all neglected. Okay, so these things I explained in the previous class, the pahikashtas and khudkashtas and all. Okay, so these all contributed to the decline of Mughal treasury. So the nobles were unable to get from their jagirs the income indicated on the paper. This is also true. Okay, the lands were cultivated again and again and again. So at some point of time, the land will lose its fertility or the quality, and the productivity obviously will become low if it is not properly taken care of. So eventually, the nobles could not get what they were supposed to get from their lands. Okay, and once this revenue reduced, the nobles started to reduce the quota of troops that they maintained. Actually, Shah Jahan allowed it. Okay, Shah Jahan already allowed it by decreasing the amount of servers to be kept to 1/3. But even then, that was not enough. It had to be further reduced. So that was done during these times. So basically, this kind of attitude or this led to the decline or the not so much good upkeep of Mughal army. So basically, it weakened the Mughal army also. In Deccan, many of the Mansabdars entered into private agreements with the Maratha Sardars and agreed to pay Chaut in return for not disturbing their jagirs. I already talked about this point. Due to the policy of Deccan policy of Aurangzeb, some of the Mughal nobles had had enough, and they entered into certain negotiations with the Marathas themselves and agreed to pay the Chaut as long as they won't attack their jagirs. And then due to the huge number of Mansabdars, there occurred a shortage of jagirs. Okay, only the newly conquered areas are around Karnataka region, and that is not so much of yield. And already Marathas are causing huge trouble in that region. So no one wanted to become a Mansabdar in those areas. So huge shortage of jagirs. Shah Jahan had earlier reduced the number of horses and savars a Mansabdar was expected to maintain. I already told you this point. But that eventually led to the less power or decline of Mughal army. So Aurangzeb, as a last step, or he was in a very awkward situation, and as a desperate attempt to conserve resources, Aurangzeb put a virtual ban on new recruitment. Okay, I'm not going to take any more Mansabdars. I already have a huge number to take care of, and this is enough. Only problem was the hereditary nobles and sons, etc., their sons and all did not like this. Why? Because they were expecting to get new mansabs when they got into the prominent positions. So when Aurangzeb said that I'm not going to give any more mansabdari, all of them became extremely disappointed. Okay, and it has also been argued that Mughal nobility acted in an anti-national manner because it was drawn from diverse communities and ethnic and racial groups and lacked a national character. But you have to understand that the feeling of nationalism as such was not there. India was not there at that time. This was a monarchy. So it was the loyalty towards the crown. That is all. There is no loyalty to the nation. It is the loyalty to the Mughal dynasty. And this is a very argumentative statement because most of the Mughal nobles, barring some exceptions, were always loyal to the Mughal emperor. Okay. However, there might be plenty of infighting between each other, but when it came to the loyalty to the Mughal throne, they were always loyal to that. So nationalism as such cannot be considered as a cause for it. Okay, you can't actually say that we can't use nationalism in the modern sense as a cause for the decline of Mughal dynasty. But yeah, there were plenty of infighting and factionalism between Mughal nobles. So nobles began to assume independent heirs only when administrative machinery was allowed to decay by the successors of Aurangzeb. So until or as long as there was a strong monarch in the throne, Mughal nobility also were very loyal. But the moment the weak successors came into the throne, nobility also started to create problems for the dynasty. Mughal administrative system was highly centralized. This is another huge problem. I explained this previously also in various chapters. As long as you have a strong monarch, centralization is not an issue. But the moment a weak successor comes into the throne, everything is lost. This happened to the Khalji. Okay, when Alauddin Khalji overly centralized his administration, when a weak ruler came to the throne, everything collapsed. Same goes for Ashokas, say the Mauryas, everyone. Whenever there is a strong monarchy, as it will, if it is highly centralized, it will stand to lose when a weak person comes into the throne. As long as it is ruled by a strong monarch, it's fine. The moment it is replaced by a weak monarch, everything falls down. Same thing happened with Mughal dynasty as well. Aurangzeb committed a number of blunders. Okay, I already explained all these blunders in today's class. For example, inability to understand the true nature of Maratha movement. Okay, he disregarded Jai Singh's advice to befriend Shivaji. He should have trusted Shivaji and he should have listened to Jai Singh's advice. He did not do that. He humiliated Shivaji. Execution of Sambhaji, another political blunder. So all these blunders committed by Aurangzeb just added fuel to the fire. Okay, just 2 more slides and we are done. Okay, so Aurangzeb did give mansabs to many Maratha Sardars. In fact, Maratha Sardars had more mansab at the highest levels than Rajputs ever had. Okay, Aurangzeb had huge issues with Shivaji and all, but still, Marathas were given very high mansabs during the time of Aurangzeb. Only problem is Marathas were not trusted. Okay, unlike the Rajputs, Marathas were never given offices of trust and responsibility. They were given high mansabs, but they were not given offices of trust and responsibility. Understood? So this is the fundamental difference between Mughal relationship with two Hindu kingdoms, the Marathas and the Rajputs. Mughals trusted Rajputs and gave them high mansabs and all. As far as Marathas are concerned, they gave high mansabs, but they never trusted Marathas. This is the fundamental difference. The impact of Deccani and other wars on Mughal Empire and the prolonged absence of Aurangzeb from northern India. This cannot be overestimated. Okay, Aurangzeb spent 25 years in the Deccan region away from his throne. He abandoned the throne in Delhi and stayed in Central India, Deccan region for 25 years. So this is also considered as one of the reasons for decline of Mughal dynasty. Yes, this is one of the reasons. Why? Because there were certain things happening in far corners of Mughal Empire, especially in northwest and northeast and all. And there were certain rebellions in the Delhi around the throne. So all this obviously contributed to the decline of the dynasty, but still, this cannot be overestimated. Mughal Empire was still powerful and vigorous military power and administrative machinery during the death of Aurangzeb. This is a fact. Despite all the things Aurangzeb did, despite all the things his predecessors did, still, when Aurangzeb died in 1707, Mughal dynasty was, 1607, Mughal dynasty was still at its height. Okay, Mughal dynasty had supreme military power, supreme administrative machinery, etc., etc. There was no power anywhere in India which could have competed with Mughals even then. The real decline starts afterwards. So politically, despite the military reverses and the mistakes of Aurangzeb, the Mughal dynasty still remained a powerful hold on the minds and imaginations of the people. This is the main takeaway. Despite everything that we have so far discussed, still in the hearts and minds of the people, Mughal dynasty still commanded a very powerful and very respectable hold. Okay, that we can see later also. Even in the revolt of 1857, people of India actually proclaimed Bahadur Shah Zafar as the king. Even the Hindu rulers in India basically proclaimed Bahadur Shah Zafar as the emperor of India. So that was the kind of impact or the respect the Mughal dynasty had in the minds of people of India, irrespective of religion. Okay, so this is the final slide, conclusion. Aurangzeb's religious policy should be seen in social, economic, and political context. You shouldn't isolate it into a narrow-minded policy. Yes, He was an orthodox, narrow-minded person, but still many of the religious policies were taken in addition or in terms with social, economic, and political context, mostly political context. Okay, orthodox in his outlook and tried to remain broadly within the framework of Islamic law. Correct. Failure to respect the susceptibilities of his non-Muslim subjects. His enunciation of a policy which led to the destruction of many temples and reimposition of jizya as laid down by the Islamic law did not help him to rally Muslims in his side, but at the same time lost the loyalty of Hindus. That is true. Aurangzeb tried to present and project himself as a very staunch Islam who led his life as per Sharia. So for that, for one of the reasons why he reimposed jizya and did all these things was to project this image, expecting that this would rally all the Muslims behind him. Only problem was this did not rally the Muslims behind him, and at the same time it alienated the Hindus who had supported him so far. So although he did it for something which is politically, or say which might earn him a bit of good, it ended it in a double disaster. Okay, and on the other hand, it alienated the segments of Hindus. Yes, that's what I just said. Also, no need to say this again, neglect of modern science and technology. In India, this was general, okay? I mean, Marathas, Mughals, doesn't matter. Almost all the Indian and Asian dynasties and powers neglected science and technology while it grew in Europe. So when Britishers and European powers come to Asia and Indian areas, we see the stark differences between India or Asia and the Europeans. Maratha army also a bit modernized. They used matchlock guns and all. Mughals did not even have that. Okay, so very backward as far as modern science and technology is concerned. By the time Aurangzeb came to the throne, the socio-economic forces of disintegration were already strong. Also very important. This is not Aurangzeb's fault. When he inherited this kingdom, he got the empire in a very awkward phase. The socio-economic forces of disintegration was already present due to the activities of his predecessors, including Shah Jahan. Okay, and War of Succession just encouraged it. And Aurangzeb lacked the foresight and statesmanship necessary to effect fundamental changes to this. Thus, Aurangzeb was both the victim of circumstances and helped to create the circumstances of which he became a victim. Okay, so he was already a victim when he came to the throne, and then he created circumstances in which he became a victim on his own. Clear? So he contributed to the decline in both ways. He already was a victim. That is not his fault. It is the fault of his ancestors. And then he created certain conditions of which he became a victim. This sentence basically rounds out or summarizes Aurangzeb's contribution to the decline of Mughal dynasty. Okay, so I think I will stop here. Thank you all for joining. So we have completed medieval India. This has been a very lengthy session, 2 hours 48 minutes so far. You all have been very patient. Thanks a lot for staying back. Let me just see if there are any more questions. Mansabdars became burden to economic conditions of Mughals. Obviously, yes. That is what I told. Mansabdars became a burden. Why? Because number of Mansabdaris increased. There is no new territory to give them. Number one. Number two, when Aurangzeb abandoned this practice, those noble people who were looking forward to getting new Mansabdars got disappointed. Number two. Three, due to the Deccan policy, Mansabdars were fed up with Aurangzeb and they entered into personal negotiations with Marathas. That is another example. Okay, then number four, from the Mansabdari, they got the land productivity gradually decreased, that they did not get enough revenue. Then again, from the revenue they couldn't maintain such a huge army, so the number of Savars were further reduced. So yes, Mansabdari, increasing the number of Mansabdari basically became a burden to the Mughals. Then how much this times number of Mansabdars got increased? How this much times Mansabdar got increased? Because of the lack of visions. Or look, plenty of reasons are there. As far as these Rajputs and these people are Marathas etc. were concerned, these Mansabdaris were given in order to make alliances with them, and in order to keep that alliances, build on that alliances. Then earlier, if you remember, during Akbar's initial phase, Mansabdari could be transferred. But later on, this became more or less hereditary. So you can't take away an existing Mansabdari and give it to someone else. That became a problem. Every time you have to create a Mansabdar, you have to take new territory and give it to him. Okay, so that also became a problem. So eventually, after 3 generations of time, obviously the Mansabdari increased. If it could have been transferred, then you could have reduced this more and more new makings as such. Clear? So this was a lack of vision. If this number of Mansabdari increases, where in proportion with the increase in territorial extent, then it wouldn't have been a problem. But lack of territorial extent, when combined with the huge increase in Mansabdari, caused decline of Mughals. Then, in whom reign Mansabdar's post became hereditary? I'm not exactly sure about that, but I think by the time of Akbar's death, okay, towards the end of Akbar's reign itself, it became hereditary. I will look it and come back to you. Okay, I think by the time of Akbar's death itself, some of the Mansabdaris became very much hereditary. Because I think I remember telling to you that this transference of Mansabdari was more or less a theoretical concept. For all practical purposes, it did not happen. Okay, that is the answer I assume. If there is any change to it, I will definitely inform you. I will put it in the Telegram chat and explain it in the next class as well. Okay, so thank you all for joining. Please make sure to like this video, subscribe to it, and send it to your friends also. So I will upload this PPT in my Telegram channel. The link is given here. So that is it. Thank you all. Any last questions? From the father, Mansabdari will not be transferred to his heir, and it was given new at the situation also. It was supposed to be done like that. Okay, once that Mansabdar retires from the force, his Mansabdari was supposed to be taken back and he was to be pensioned off, and this should be given to someone else who comes into that position. But rather than doing that, this became hereditary. So to the new person who is coming into the fill that position, a new area had to be carved out and given to him. Understood? So this is not so good for Mughal dynasty or any dynasty for that matter, empire that in their political as well as economic area, and eventually led to the decline of the dynasty. So that is it. We have completed medieval India. Thank you all for joining. So next class will be an MCQ session on current affairs. I will announce it tomorrow. Then afterwards, we will have one session on mains answer writing, I think. Otherwise, we will start with ancient India and we will go on from there. Okay. So bye-bye. Please share with your friends. And I will also request you to post public comments underneath this video, not in the live chat session. Once I end this video, you can comment underneath it. Please do that also, so that those comments are taken as engagements with the video, and it will help to bring in more audience. Okay, so I will request you to do that as well. So thank you for joining me and see you in the next class.